You can discover the secrets hidden within your own dance at memes/death battle.
That's the number memes/death battle.
I'll take your entire stock!
Welcome back to every episode of Death Battle reviewed in 10 words or less. Last time was a massive improvement in more ways than one, and took a number of risks that had helped the show reach new heights. But among those risks were some pretty embarrassing miscalculations, as well as a first half that was still trying to step away from the white noise energy of the previous season. But once the show finally found its identity, we got some bona fide legendary outings. To the point where I couldn't have been more excited for what the show had in store for us despite the Thanos copter shit-stirring of its final brown note. Wiz and Boomstick were here to stay in their on-screen showings, and the pre-fight tagline even got a subtle update. To me, this showed a bit of humbleness from the crew. It's not like they were the only Versus show on the webs, and this pastime is all about a little something called interpretation. Plus, it also showed a bit of realism too, cause the debates sometimes get even more insane after an episode drops. Consider this new tagline plausible deniability, if you will. And speaking of denial, time to talk about a Marvel vs. DC premiere again. Oh goody.
Water, 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 and water, and water, 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 and water, and water, 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 and water, and water, 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 and water, and
Aquaman vs. Namor. Thank Neptune Namor wasn't in the MCU yet. I honestly don't know if my body could have handled it after last time. Arthur's segment is the definition of fine. They're good at making him feel pretty cool, and the cutaway with the tridents was really fun. Nice to see Jocelyn getting mentioned. But I feel like the most notable running theme being about how not lame your character is comes off as desperate. And the SpongeBob bit was so lame, which should say a lot coming from the guy who references that show every other minute. Also, SpongeBob doesn't wear yellow. That's like saying Homer wears yellow. And Arthur's suit is orange. How did we come to this conclusion? Namor's segment fucking sucks.
You baby's a piece of shit!
It's not the worst, but it's way more formulaic and is blatantly just brief backstory, abilities, arsenal, feats, and a cutaway gag that manages to rival the Deadpool cameo and birdcage levels of drag. Go watch that movie, by the way, it's great. Like seriously, what else does this segment have going for it? Briefly mentioning that Namor has a fake version of bipolar disorder? An out-of-place Jimmy Kimmel clip? Seriously, fuck this cutaway gag! Why is Boomstick doing a Bane impression during a Marvel segment? Stop reminding me of this goddamn episode! Literally, the best part is the revelation of why Aquaman has two different tridents, but this moment inherently relies on content from the previous segment, so it can't even stand on its own. Well, hopefully this fight will at least be able to... Man, they really liked using this one clip for Aquaman, huh? I guess in order to set you up for how seriously they want you to take this fight, instead of taking place in some kind of underwater coliseum as the two battle for the right to control the seven seas, they're just hanging out in a public pool while a MIDI version of All-Star is playing. Can we please stop having motivations involving someone trying to relax by a body of water and getting needlessly pissy? No fish bones about it. Namor is an actual bitch in this fight. I was half expecting him to call the manager to try and get Arthur kicked out. Most of his lines are yelling in the most annoying tone or trying way too hard to sound threatening. I know there was literally one throwaway line in the analysis that he's a villain sometimes, but if he's half the lame wad we see here in the comics, I'm sending that shit back to Davy Jones' locker where it belongs. I did not think that one line would be used as a justification for Namor being this insufferable. Dude got love tapped once, and that was all it took to send him into a blind rage state.
Peasant! You dare splash the Prince of Blood? Everyone has their place. That's just how things are.
Imperious Rex!
Shut the fuck up. No offense to Todd Habercorn, he just had so little to work with, and it's arguably a worse miscast than all of his other death battle roles outside of Ty now that I think about it. Damn. Part of me wonders if Todd was cast just so they could have Arthur say this Spock line. Remember when he played Spock on that show created by... Let's just move on. At least Kaiji Tang got to sound like he was having a little bit of fun here. Playing Arthur up like some kind of surfer dude bro while still being able to rein it in for when the time calls for it.
You may be a prince, but I am the king of the seven seas.
Let's see whose power truly controls the sea.
I dig it. You are such a terrific dumbass.
Yeah, the terrific dumbass line is kinda iconic, but I hate when these moments only work through making the opponent look way worse to an unreasonable degree. And while he may be far more enjoyable by comparison, he is by no means off the hook when it comes to his performance. He does the thing of getting ragdolled with minimal resistance until he just decides to lock in finally. I guess he just had some chlorine clogged in him for a bit. I'd call this a critique of the choreography, but that would imply this battle has choreography. You see this? This is what little kids do when they have a handful of vegetables lying on their plates. I have to assume that Trident combat is just really tricky to animate naturally. It felt like watching a Pichu main fight against a Sonic main, and yet, that'd probably still be less lame to sit through. Namor even has to deal with reconnecting his controller partway through. Seriously, Arthur does this insanely extravagant dolphin launching move that takes forever, while Namor did jack shit. The fighting is simply not fun to watch, and it's pretty dumb just how long it takes for the fish to play a part in the action. But things take a slight turn for the better in the climax. Using the anglerfish for these unique lighting shots was cool, and hey, at least now the choppy fighting is justified in universe for a change. And then after a rousing bit of misgendering, Arthur sicks his boys on Namor for a pretty awesome fatality, all things considered. It took a bit to get there, but wait a minute. A Marvel vs. DC episode where they lean into the Marvel character's unlikable villainous side too much, has terrible back and forth and the slow as hell choreography, and is brought up tremendously by the death. Damn it, we started our season with a Flash vs. Quicksilver, didn't we? Would I call this episode as bad as that one, though? No! Aquaman vs. Namor is 1,000,000 times worse. Or should I say, 1,000 times worse.
Coming to a little over 178,000 tons.
Yes, science!
I've seen some folks call this episode overhated, but I don't think it's hated enough. The analyses are boring, sometimes insufferable, the fighting is stiff, the back and forth is uninteresting, half of our cast makes me want to play underwater for an hour just like Baby Arthur. That was an actual fucking slog, holy shit! The only things keeping it out of Black Panther vs. Batman's tier are the first Trident cutaway, Kaiji's performance, and the death. Other than that, you will not catch me rewatching this episode anytime soon. That's a Rizzo guarantee. Oh my gosh. It's motherfucking Kame House, baby! This episode is peak!
Wow, a real superhero.
I have little wings on my feet.
Yeah, and it's over. It's over.
You're the un-me. I'm the real me. You wanna be me, kiddo? I was the real me when you were still in my short pants. Hate to break it to you, but I wore them first. So you're the one who stained them.
Mega Man Battle Royale! Alright, boys. Time for some real fucking peak. I'm not gonna lie, I was getting ever so slightly worried by the existence of not only 2 Marvel vs. DC episodes in a row, but also ones that happened to suck shark chum. Perhaps Death Battle subconsciously realized that they needed something bold after one of the briniest openers ever. And announcing a 5-combatant battle royale as your second episode of the season roughly 5 years after your last attempt at the structure? Okay, yeah, fair enough, you piqued my interest. And this is coming from a guy who's mostly dabbled in the classic and X series. Mega Man X still holds up, by the way. I was interested to see if we'd be getting an episode like Pokemon, or something more akin to TMNT.
24.
Stab wounds.
I had not considered the secret third option of doing something better than both combined. The best way for me to describe these segments is like a fusion dance. On their own, they're nothing special, but they come together to make something greater than the sum of their parts. Which is why ranking them by levels of enjoyment is kinda pointless. Though if you twisted my arm, my list would probably go Volnut EXE, Star Force Classic, and X from best to worst. Because I found the later segments more compelling when it came to story and unique powers, while the last two had the unfortunate fate of needing to retread a bunch of information from previous episodes. But still, when looking at them together, it's kinda nuts the way they essentially presented a complete Mega Man timeline to us in the span of less than 20 minutes. Do you have any idea how hard that is? They don't just end the segments, they transition into the next one as if it was a history lecture, even handling the alternate timeline shenanigans in an easy-to-understand way. The music choices are some of my favorites with a great combination of synth and 8-bit pop. Data Charge is so hype, you guys, like, come on! And the jokes range from grin-worthy to straight-up iconic. I'm sure you all can guess why Volnut's segment was my favorite. Putting aside the bit you likely remember most, it has some really funny moments the whole way through. Like when Wiz tries a typical bad pun and you think Boomstick is gonna berate him for it as usual. But he's actually just talking about how lame Volnut's name is, just to say the only thing dumber is Wiz's pun. That was a fun subversion. While they refer to him as Diet Mega Man, a moniker that's kinda inevitable in any battle royale, it's far more respectful than how previous characters in this class got treated in the past. They give him his due credit. And the rant at the end is more so about Boomstick's frustration towards Capcom as a company for mishandling Mega Man so poorly for the longest time. I'd posit Legends 3 to be in the same league as Half-Life 3 at this point, you know I'm right. Despite that, they managed to end the segments off on a lighthearted note. I'm a big fan of the subtle Siri callback between Star Force and EXE. EXE's ending comes off as a fun inside joke for fans of the game that they all knew was inevitable.
30 years experience!
And I love how much this episode escalates in scale and absurdity, something Boomstick even points out. Shout out to the no relation callback from Nightwing vs. Daredevil.
He's wizard equipped, and I'm stick.
And nice use of the final smash, by the way, for the pre-fight bumper. A fight that, I'll be honest, is good. But this is one of those times where I actually rewatched the analysis portion more than the animation. Let me break it down.
You know I have to do this. I know.
You feel the threat 'cause every step is right.
Because there's a lot going on here, naturally. Like this oh-so-subtle nod to the Astro Boy opening. Classic even teleports behind you again. With the rest of the cast pretty humorously plopped on top of them. Staying true to the idea of their last battle royale, that this super hypothetical scenario is being orchestrated by the Death Battle team themselves. And I guess they took out all their empathy chips too, cause it is on site, like damn. The following few seconds is an awesome free-for-all in the kind of robotic chaos I was hoping for out of this. Though it doesn't last too long, as the fight eventually gets separated into two factions, the warm-up crew and the real fight. As I'm sure you can imagine, quite a bit has to be scaled down to make something as complex as this work. At least with army fights, you can get away with copy-pasting shit in the background. These are 5 sprite sheets competing for main character energy, and unfortunately, that's why there's no dialogue, as well as some fairly limited choreography. Like how Classic shoots a sticky bomb at X, and they both just kinda stand there, followed by the both of them powering up for a single shot and deflect move that may as well be puppet tooling. Let me make one thing clear. I give this episode a lot more leeway compared to most due to how unique its situation is. Why do you think we've never gotten a battle royale since as of the time of writing this? I have a feeling Liam realized this and therefore tried working in more subtle things to pick up on to make up for the lack of actual interaction, such as the division I brought up before representing the gap in power levels, or how Classic is constantly targeting X like a jealous older brother. Hey, you probably have daddy issues too if your parents decide to have someone better than you in every way when it comes to stuff like sports, music, getting the lead role in your school's play while you were stuck playing one of the bushes, always having her art put on the fridge right next to yours because the world just has to know how perfect Aurora is. I mean how beautiful Aurora Borealis is this time of year, don't you think? Kinda reminds me of how cool looking the sprite art is here.
That's it?
Yes.
While they may have abandoned the corresponding colors to weapon switch-ups from last time, we get something a lot more rare than you'd think on this show. Dynamic battle damage throughout. And would you look at that, they took creative liberties on the colors and nobody cared. Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, don't care.
The armor nicks and short circuits go a long way in selling the power tiering of this fight, which is clear to see. Volnut does next to nothing meaningful.
Mother
and is basically just there to be at most pesky, leading to this hilarious reaction and great meme template after he realizes how cosmically boned he is. Part of me wishes after seeing the other men transform that he responded by putting on his helmet. It's removed to help distinguish him from Classic, but I love the idea of a black hole showing up and just going, safety first. That black hole, by the way, while admittedly kind of a lame way to go out, serves its purpose brilliantly in alluding to how the results play out. Volnut is taken out pretty much immediately, followed by Classic who puts up more of a struggle, then we see X having to regenerate his whole body and Starforce losing an arm, whilst EXE casually heals and is completely fine. That is some masterful show don't tell storytelling and kinda makes the whole no dialogue thing more respectable. So yeah, EXE clearly is the dominant force here, and the only reason Starforce got that combo in earlier was cause he went for a surprise attack. Those only work once though, and EXE was not messing around this time. But after destroying Mother Elf and possessing X, seriously, is Starforce always this much of a pussy?
Fair fights don't exist. I'm in the cut watching you. Watching, waiting for my time. Ain't no rules in war.
We get one final beam struggle that is elevated greatly by Mega Mania, a Brandon Yates rock track that acts as a great homage to the Mega Man universe and just flat out sounds awesome. I love how Luis found a way to represent all 5 men in the cover art. That's super neat.
Heyo, Editor Flip here. One thing that Nate didn't mention that I find super cool, the track Mega Mania, it syncs up with the fight. Alrighty, back to you, Nate.
After a hard-fought and pretty unique beam struggle with it technically being a 2-on-1, EXE comes out victorious, followed by a pretty humorous shot of him looking around to make sure there's nobody else about to backshot him again.
That was Pepper's building, wasn't it?
And then a moment that, while funny, and likely an attempt to represent his personality a little, assuming this is accurate, I haven't played those games, made me realize something I wasn't actively picking up on before. If you've seen this episode, you may know what I'm talking about, and even if you don't, trust me, you do. Did that clip seem fine to you? Nothing worth getting frazzled over? Well, here's the actual episode. There's a delay. A delay of 8 frames to be exact. That may not sound like much, but it's just enough to give this episode an overall air of stank to it that could have easily been avoided. Luckily, it's not enough to tank this Battle Royale network, and we even get a calculation record in the end results. Enjoy that sweet victory while you can, EXE. The fight may not be one of my favorites, but it's impossible not to bow down in reverence at the mere existence of this episode. Plus, the analyses are still a well-presented journey of the franchise, which I feel was the most important thing for this episode to get right. Or any same series Battle Royale for that matter. Link Battle Royale next time with a different animation style for each fighter. Everyone gets a psychic / summon and they all have a different voice actor dedicated to the grunts. Do what you won't!
It sure is boring around here.
Hey! Excuse me!
So I fired again, and I missed, and then I missed again,
and then I fired again, and then I missed, and then I fired, and then I fired, and I missed. This went on for several hours, and then I fired, and then I missed.
And then I was out of bullets, and then I got sad, and then I passed out in the snow. I fired, I hit something, but it wasn't what I was going for, so I guess I missed. I passed out again.
Long story short, missed.
Black Widow versus Widowmaker. I know, haha, they both have Widow in their names, but this is surprisingly going to be one of the most thematic matchups of the season, believe it or not. More interesting than Marvel and DC's token Water Boys, at least. And while it's always a relief to get a character from Marvel baby not tied to dank comics, I was personally more relieved to see an Overwatch character not dragging TF2 back down to its level. Hey, I will accept a Tracer vs Scout rematch, but if you want anything else from this crossover, just watch the winglet for Gabe's sake. Although I'm not even sure if Overwatch is worth bringing back at all now that the bar has been raised so high. Cause guys, I gotta level with ya. This is the most criminally underrated episode of the entire show. How's the salty TF2 fan gonna justify this take, you might ask? In a word, gladly. These analysis sections are actually incredible. And I'm not just saying that because my standards have been lowered so much by previous episodes of the same ilk. This might sound weird, but the way Nat's section is written reminds me a lot of the Joker's. Both of them have intentionally vague backstories, and here they justify this by emphasizing her role as a secret agent with a mysterious past, even explaining how some of her different origin stories are implanted memories. The way they discuss Black Widow's tragic upbringing and redemption is far more compelling than I thought it would be. That goes double time for Widowmaker, who I certainly thought would have faced a similar issue as Shovel Knight and Yang when it comes to content disparity. But since they both have such limited power sets, this gave Death Battle the opportunity to zero in on the elements of these characters that tied them together, even throwing in a hint of Amelie's remaining humanity towards the end that could lead her to the same path of good guy therapy as Nat. Assuming, of course, that Blizzard is at all competent. The writing on both sides also is just really immersive, especially in moments like Wiz describing the feeling of being operated on while conscious. It's honestly pretty stomach-churning. Oh hey, another Joker parallel! These are by no means the kind of characters I gravitate towards, but it just goes to show how important a theme and good writing is for making an analysis anyone can understand and feel engaged with. Wiz and Boomstick's antics are also a lot more tolerable this time around. Even when the joke isn't that great, the pacing is fast enough for it to not really bother me. And every now and then we get amusing moments like Boomstick's shotgun blast timing perfectly with the footage. I live for crap like that. I would say this is a major glow up compared to the last Overwatch analysis, but that's kinda what happens when you actually, wait longer than a few months after a game's release to do a deep dive on one of its characters. And keep in mind, this is back when's writing debut. Ben is credited too, but that's still seriously impressive, especially for such a unique episode. Once again, just like with the Joker, an unconventional premise was mandatory to make this thing work. The results don't hide that throwing hands right from the get-go would not last long. And much like with Green Arrow versus Hawkeye, these are the kinds of support characters that require a little something extra to work in a solo outing. And this time, they absolutely killed it. Right away, this setting and color grading is an awesome mood setter, feeling as cold-blooded as the fighters themselves. Setting this up as a botched bodyguard job was a great excuse for why Nat doesn't just immediately bite it, which allows the both of them to feel equally competent. Amelie is all business, while Nat comes up with a really clever way to bait out her attacker's vantage point. From here on out, it becomes a mad dash game of long-range action that I've never seen the show pull off in such a cool way before. We've had the occasional shoot-off in the past, but most of them either devolve into standing and waiting for the bullets to run out, or simply serving as an obstacle/prelude to the actual combat. Here it's the main draw, and the city environment is used expertly for duck and cover moments and destruction that puts continent-level fighters to shame. What I love most about the dynamic are the subtle character moments that show how they both handle missions going awry. Amelie starts out calm and unfeeling, after all, it's just another job for her. But the more she misses and the more public, very noticeable destruction unfolds, the more visibly frustrated and impatient she gets that this annoying Nat just won't stay down. Not with a G this time. Meanwhile, Natasha may start out cautious, but that doesn't make her lose her poker face. And true to how they describe her in the analysis, she is laser focused on surviving no matter the cost. And yes, that is literal. She's a goddamn Avenger, remember? Saving the city itself is an optional side quest. Speaking of Avengers, the performances are so freaking good! As far as I know, Jeannie Torrado does a really convincing French accent and is great at selling the rise in stress before exploding towards the end as her situation gets more and more desperate.
What makes you think you could sneak up on me?
And Natalie Van Sistine gives a stone-cold take that complements Nat's badass moments amazingly. And considering the kinds of characters she'd go on to play in the future, clearly she has a knack for professional killers that get shit done.
Trying to escape me? No chance. I'm
I'm a goddamn Avenger.
Yes, it's cheesy, but I say she earned that line after everything she went through to finally close the gap. Sure, Nat may have a reputation for bungee jumping without the cord, but here I'd like to imagine she knew her opponent would be forced to expend some precious energy by saving them both with that nifty grappling hook she'd been utilizing for building hopping. And by the time Amelie is disarmed, she's become the fly futilely trying to break out of its webbed tomb. To her credit, she doesn't go out silently, even doing some meaningful damage with an impromptu glass shard. But quick thinking isn't enough against pure skill and experience. I gotta respect how honest this episode is when it comes to the gap in hands thrown. While some of the moves feel a little too choreographed, I still love this section for how gritty and brutal it is. Easily one of the most painful looking deaths the show has done. Not bad for plain old decapitation. And the whole thing transpires in a ballet studio that takes on an almost monotone color scheme towards the end, becoming Amelie's very own red room delivered by the pain and trauma Nat went through to become the assassin she is today. Widowmaker may be literally cold-blooded, but Black Widow is fucking cold-blooded.
Do svidania.
God, I love that final exchange. Really driving home how unmatched Nat's stubbornness towards death really is. Certain movies notwithstanding. Feel free to call me crazy, but this episode seriously gives me season 2 vibes when it comes to the storytelling and intensity. I feel like that might be part of the reason why it took a while to find an audience. Its presentation is just so unique and experimental. Jesus Christ, how many Joker comparisons am I gonna make in this segment? Hell, this animation is such a black sheep that it single-handedly convinced the team to get rid of the fight graphic. Yeah, I bet some of you were wondering when I was finally gonna acknowledge this bombshell. The iconic fight announcement is no more. Though we still have the KO screen at least. I remember witnessing the fucking insane uproar this development caused at the time, because apparently folks couldn't figure out on their own when the fighting actually starts. Though I guess that'd imply Death Battle fans know how to read in the first place. By getting rid of the fight graphic, the writers and animators no longer had to feel boxed into making an obligatory stance-up scene. And I totally see why it was this episode that inspired such a change. Sure, you could argue it'd fit on top of these oversized bullets clashing together, but one, that'd look fucking stupid. And two, without the fight graphic, I never get taken out of the chilling atmosphere this episode had so carefully been crafting. Be honest, you don't think maybe hearing some random guy go, "Fight!" over this tense back and forth between two serious super spies wouldn't have been just a tad bit jarring? I think in order to get the best experience possible out of this fight, you need to treat it less like a versus battle and more like a short film. It's clearly more interested in doing its own thing, and I'll always support an unconventional structure so long as it's in service to the characters and plays into their strengths. Snake vs. Sam did it, Terminator vs. RoboCop did it. Get out of my head! The analysis sections are engaging enough to make me reevaluate these characters. The chilling vibes are immaculate, the performances are great, Widow's kiss has incredible synergy with the rising stakes, and the exciting set pieces go a long way in making these two look badass in their own special street tier ways. Leave the skyscraper wreckage to the real heroes, you bozos. I'm not even pissed that Nat's movie sucked after so long of a wait, cause I've already got my own Black Widow cinematic experience at home. This is everything Green Arrow vs. Hawkeye could have been, having a much more interesting dynamic as well as taking advantage of those Rooster Teeth bucks without losing the plot. At this point, I'm convinced any idea can work. Does anyone else smell toast?
Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips!
Captain Marvel vs. Shazam. Well, shit. So, we're only 4 episodes into the season, and already we're on our second Marvel vs. DC episode, as well as our third episode featuring a Marvel character. One that was already on the show less than 2 years ago, just so they could do a matchup that they literally admitted only exists because both of their films just so happen to come out at the same time. That's pretty fucking ballsy. I kinda respect how transparent they were here. Captain Marvel's segment is exactly what you'd expect from an analysis of a comic character that's previously been here not too long ago. Who could have seen that one coming, right? They tell a slightly different version of the backstory by saying how she had the Kree genes already in her, while last time they got blasted into her by an alien named Mar-Vell, who's only hinted at this time. But other than that, it's most of the same. It's basically just, what if Carol's analysis was written at a time when the cutaways existed? And these cutaways are pretty great at existing. Anyone else find this full body shot super uncanny, by the way? Yeah, Black Widow segment, this is not. They really should have taken advantage of her already being being here by telling us about more specific shit like the Civil War story or whatever. Why do I feel like the she can freaking fly part was added just to mess with me after last time? As for Billy's, it's alright. They get across his awesome might being held back by inexperience since he's still a teenager. The jokes are a little funnier. Chad's delivery in this beer cutaway was great. But low-key, the most interesting part was this copyright spiel they went on for why the name changed. There's a lot more to it than I thought. Seems like it'd be a good topic for a video essay. Also, nice spy versus spy shoutout. It is perfectly serviceable, which I feel can describe the animation as well. I don't mean to come off as rude to the animators, it's not like they half-assed it when it came to the VFX and upbeat energy of the flight combat. But I get the feeling even the team knew that this wasn't the kind of matchup that needed 110% of their effort, if you catch my drift. It's one of the biggest shitstomps they've ever done outside of Infinite Gaps. Though that doesn't stop Wiz from saying both were pushed to their limits, only to follow that up with the incomprehensibly massive supernova feat. Carol lost to a mid-tier Dragon Ball character before. What did she do to deserve this? She's certainly more likable compared to last time. Terry Doty returns and feels much more like a hero this time. Might be because they were able to come up with a dynamic that makes a lot more sense and is even a little wholesome. The way Carol talks to Billy at the beginning is pretty close to how a disappointed mother might scold her son.
You really think you can get away with something so petty? What was that? Oh, right. Shazam.
I kinda wish they had committed to this back and forth, cause it's really charming and takes advantage of the age gap, which is something we don't normally see in our combatants. I thought they were going to do something interesting with this after Carol sees Billy turn into a kid, but after he transforms back, they just go right back to fighting, and it's pretty obvious the crew just wanted to wrap this shit up. The fight barely cracks 2.5 minutes. But there's still plenty of fun stuff here that's a bit more consistent. Marvelous has a fittingly heroic sound to it thanks to the brass, and Billy himself is pretty entertaining. The one-liners are cheesy in a fun, actively trying to sound cool kind of way that fits the character. And the vocal performance is great at sounding dorky while also throwing in some great yells.
Oh, I didn't mean, this isn't, right. See ya! Okay, time to go.
Shazam!
Who plays him again? Oh damn. Michael Kovach's mission to gain all the indie animation voice acting stones started real early, didn't it?
Boris, shut up!
Also, pour one out for Paige Stork, who was brought into the booth to say literally one word. Shazam! I mean, a gig is a gig. At the end of the day, while the reason for this episode existing is kinda cynical, it's far too cute for me to be offended by it. It did what it set out to do, and what that was ended up being better than Carol's last episode at least. And I'm giving this episode a 6 out of 10. It's closer to a 5 than a 7. Hey, I said it was better, that doesn't mean it's not mid.
But nobody, and I mean nobody, compares to the biggest enemies in the game. Heavy boys. Swordsmen, easy. Small users, easy. Every villain in the campaign. I sleep. Oh lord, it's the heavy boys. Real shit.
I am so sorry for what I'm about to do in advance, but I just have to. Wario versus King Dedede! Wait a minute. A Nintendo-themed episode? I love Nintendo games! And it's our first Kirby episode since my current #1 of the show? Well, I gotta know the connection!
Hi there. How you doing?
Well, it's a good thing I have the mind of a literal child. Cause this is straight up the funniest episode of the show since Mr. Satan vs. Dan Hibiki. How does such an obscene conception of obese combatants manage it? Well, these analysis segments are a good start for one. Wario's is pretty straightforward, mainly focused on his unique, sometimes vomit cake levels of gross out abilities.
Don't watch it!
But Wario is a straightforward character himself, so that works to this segment's benefit. I like the line of Wiz calling out some of Wario's supposed transformations as just being excuses. Ben's line delivery from getting fart poisoned is great. I liked learning about Wario's name. And as lowbrow as he generally is, it was nice to see his tenacity acknowledged. I guess the material they decide to pull from is a little all over the place, even using Smash Brothers unironically. But Super Mario Brothers may as well be Looney Tunes when it comes to continuity. And Wario is one of those characters where not referencing his Smash moves would just straight up be disrespectful. Plus, it's not like he's the only character this season to be in that boat. On the other fin, you've got King Dedede, the absolute Chad. And no, I'm not just saying that because Chad James mains him in Smash.
Draw me like one of your French penguins, Josh. No, I'm not doing this.
They even make a reference to one of his Smash moves that may as well be an ad-lib from personal experience. There are a bunch of fun bits, like Wiz being so baffled by King D training himself to puff up for levitation. Though I gotta side with Boomstick on this one. He's an inspiration to flightless birds everywhere. Let them have this one.
It's not a penguin, Colonel.
While he obviously parallels Wario when it comes to rivalry, not like Nintendo-Sega rivalry, I mean they literally play the role of the rival in universe, D is much more sympathetic in how they bring up the times he's genuinely tried to help his kingdom. And his beef comes less from a place of malice and more so genuine jealousy that people just liked Kirby much more. This grudge would eventually lead to self-improvement. Love the montage music they used here. That at first was just about surpassing Kirby, but eventually turned into becoming a leader worth following. And I'm happy to report that this aspect of his character has not been forgotten to this day. Dude sacrificed himself in Forgotten Land just to save one single Waddle Dee. Make way for the fucking king, baby! And oh man, that fight.
Hey, wait a minute. Like when he fought the alien Magellan.
Worst episode ever.
And oh man, that fight. Kinda weird how they exclusively use Smash footage for the pre-roll bit with the exception of one brief anime clip and then right back to Smash, but much like the legendary Sammo Hung and Zhao Po Ping, two personal heroes of mine, these two are here to show that being a little bigger doesn't stop you from kicking mountains of ass.
Do you get my joke?
With the occasional pratfall thrown in for good measure, of course. And that pratfalling aspect is significant to why I love this fight so much and why the lack of voice actors once again doesn't bother me. With Mega Man Battle Royale, not having voice actors felt more like a byproduct of the project's already mega scope. Here, it feels much more like an artistic choice. Because this is genuinely some of the best slapstick comedy I've seen on YouTube. Not to discount the actual fight choreography, there are some pretty hype moments, like Wario closing the gap for a fast-paced beatdown and King D wreaking absolute havoc on Wario for celebrating too early. But this animation's biggest strength is how well it executes squash and stretch in the sprite format. I'm so happy to see Luis, who had been appointed the show's full-time animation director, being able to finally oversee an episode that leans into his earlier focus on comedy. The timing on these hits is genuinely perfect, and the right amount of break and action is given to emphasize how the characters are feeling, who all have some of my favorite facial expressions of the season, minus this one from Dedede that's a little too toothy for me. Some of these reactions are emoji-worthy. From Wario's "I didn't sign up for this" face, to Waddle Dee freaking out over the revelation of Mask D being his king so much that he willed himself a mouth out of utter shock and possible terror. I love this little thing, by the way. He does what a good background character should by not taking away the focus from our stars while also acting as a fun little surrogate for the audience with how much he hypes up his sign. As well as being the only one to not know what ungodly horror Wario is about to unleash upon this land. Fun fact, the audience isn't actually running away because they're afraid of getting nuked, they just don't want to risk being associated with a Canadian cartoon.
Whoop. Ignore that.
Hey, do I smell petrichor?
Guilty as charged.
Same writer and producer as Avatar, ladies and gentlemen. Luckily, this is nothing like that. The humor is very much focused on the fear and disgust towards Wario's ass-blasting mayhem. Bro even pulls explosives out of his butt. What was this paisano cooking?
S-bomb. Oh my god.
The animation has so much goddamn personality. Even actions as small as ringing a gong are hilarious. And that's not even mentioning the sound design. I don't think Death Battle's action has sounded this unhinged since the freaking Lang days. Not even the sound of Wario's footsteps are subtle. This is the biggest justification for why they didn't hire voice actors, as the existing voice lines from Martinet and Sakurai do more than enough to get their personalities across. And some of the screams used may as well be ripped straight from Tom and Jerry with how intense and funny they are. This was a great way to help the episode distinguish itself from its peers like Hercule vs. Dan and Smokey vs. McGruff. Those had more of a focus on dialogue and awkward silence. Wario vs. King Dedede is loud and proud. Even the dips in action are still accentuated with those unhinged sound effects. This is compounded by the presence of Appetite for Greed, one of the jazziest tracks the show has attempted with enough extra thick bass to rival the fighters themselves. Seriously, just listen to how much stank is on that bass line. Some of those beats feel straight up personal. It's not only a bop, Appetite for Greed takes the time to slow down for certain jokes to have greater build-up, such as the aforementioned mouth fart moment, where we all know what's about to happen and are cringing for the payoff to arrive in its gloriously over-the-top fashion, as well as the flashback. Because this battle is so focused on comedy, it took this opportunity to get a little weird and wild with the setup, as our fighters actually begin in their final forms under the pretense of a wrestling match, likely with money or food on the line. When the sneak peek revealed this, I wasn't quite sure why they started out this way. But then we get that iconic sequence of the two Spider-Manning each other, as it turns out they've actually met before, under not so friendly circumstances, believe it or not. You're a victim. And now the energy has ramped up dramatically. This fight legitimately has a more compelling narrative than anything going on in our past 2 seasons' finales, and I am all for it. The petty pranks certainly fit these two better than Mario and Sonic, and to have it take place in the middle of the fight is a genius way to escalate the action despite the two technically powering down, which you don't notice thanks to the versatility they bring to the table. At the same time though, it never loses that Golden Age cartoon charm it had been building up. I love how malleable these sprite models are, especially when you consider how limiting Kirby sprites tend to be. They do a great job working around this without coming off as jarring as Kirby vs. Majin Buu, admittedly. End of flashback. Once that beautiful mushroom cloud clears out, leaving the whole area devastated, we get quite the memorable climax. While the explosion for the death is a little weak, not surprising when it's literally ripped from the last episode, there's still a lot to love about this big boy battle. The music becomes actually stress-inducing as Wario closes in for another waft, and now that Dedede knows what he's dealing with, he's frantically trying to pull a solution right out of his pants.
That's my boy. No, my boy! Father, help!
After finding a Gordo and launching it with enough force to make its eyes bug out, these things aren't generally known for emoting, we get a direct hit. Where, you might ask? Well...
The Gordo's one of his greatest tools, but it can also be a real...
It's worth noting that this is the first time the fight comes to complete dead silence. It not only has those same vibes from previous funniest deaths, but it even benefits from the inclusion of Dee's smash taunt that's so iconic, I bet most folks never realize that it's not even really a taunt.
Draw me like one of your... No, I'm not doing that!
This episode is a fantastic addition to Death Battle's comedic gallery for having some of the most iconic bits without skimping out on the action this time. Fart jokes can be funny when executed well, and not the writer's poorly disguised fetish. Hell, even Master of Disguise, one of the worst comedy films of all time, manages to pull off a decent fart joke. But hey, if the humor isn't for you, that's totally fair. I'm very glad they didn't lean too far into Smash and mostly used it for moves that would have otherwise been impossible to include. The choreography and tension benefit greatly from these moments. As far as I'm concerned, Kirby is 2 for 2 on this show, not just in wins, but also giving us banger episodes. Is this episode as significant for me as that one? Obviously no, but it's still one of my all-time faves. And unironically in the same league as our hyper-serious assassin battle a mere 2 episodes ago. Honestly, the only reason I have that one higher is because I find the analyses slightly more engaging. But it's crazy how thin the margin is there. Just goes to show how veritably versatile Death Battle is, and how at the end of the day, no matter how much we may argue, bicker, or scream, the true Pang winner—
Are you sure he's not a penguin?
—is us. Can you tell I'm stalling?
Save me, please don't let him get me, Steve, please.
It's time for No way it's over. Actually, why? No way. I do not agree with this at all. Green Lantern. No, I disagree. I disagree with that. Kill the kid. Oh my god.
That's so lame.
That was the most nerfed alien exit. So he can. Oh my god. I'm pretty sure he didn't fast enough. It's not like someone cut your arm off.
You can't go back in time? Huh?
Ben 10 versus Green Lantern. Time to talk about a perfectly normal episode with a perfectly normal reputation. Tackling a cartoon that I'm quite fond of. Ben 10 did a great job scratching that action power fantasy itch every growing boy has. I began to lose interest, admittedly, by the time Omniverse came around, but I was hyped for this matchup nevertheless. Especially since it had been a hot minute since our last DC versus non-Marvel character. For some reason, those tend to be much rarer than the inverse. Can't imagine why. Ben's analysis isn't much to write home about. I appreciate the variety of aliens they go over, including some really obscure ones. But let me tell you something, no mention of Wrath is pretty cringe, not gonna lie, Wiz. This cutaway is weird because I genuinely don't remember any mention in the series proper about the Omnitrix needing cooldown time to prevent DNA disfiguration. Feel free to let me know if I'm wrong on that. I'm sure you've been paying close attention to this segment so far and haven't already raced to the comment section to type a thesis, so I'm giving you a free pass right now. Go ahead. Any attempts at character study are shoehorned pretty aimlessly into the end, mostly because they've had to spend so much time hyping up Alien X. I hope he does something really cool in the fight. Hal's is a little better. I like how much world building is going on here. And it has a few memorable moments, like Wiz and Boomstick's bromance, as well as the yellow elephant tail. That was unexpected and fun, though once again, the character study is pretty basic. Episodes like these tend to have an easier time getting the personalities across in the animation portion, so let's see how the fight handles these two. And already, we're off to a great start. Bradley Gareth is oozing with charisma as Hal. It feels like he's been lanterning for years with how casually he approaches Ben at first, even trying to de-escalate things multiple times. And as we'll see later on, he freaking nails the stronger reads like the Lantern Oath when powering back up.
Brightest day in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light!
Nicholas Andrew Louis as Ben is a great choice in how he has good enough range to fit all the aliens that show up. I understand they don't have the budget to hire 6 other people for what are mostly one-line cameos, though it probably would have been worth at least getting someone else to voice Human Ben, much like when Shazam got depowered for a moment. But at the same time, his voice is a dead ringer for Teen Ben, who they'd clearly have to be focusing on in order to get to the crazier stuff later. And this is when you begin to realize why having Kid Ben sprites for this battle is so friggin' weird.
You're not the first doofus to try to take this. It's hero
Believe me, I get it. It was either this or make new sprites for Teen Ben and have much less aliens appear. Ultimately, they made the right decision having adult Hal fight a Ben who fights and sounds like a teenager who just so happens to look and talk like a child. Oh man, this is gonna bite me in the ass later on, isn't it? But hey, I was always more of an OG guy, so I was all for the cheesy dialogue filled with one-liners and really fun banter that never takes itself too seriously. The forearm sprites may be a little blurry, but that is more than made up for by the hand-drawn animation as well as the snappy as hell fire hydrant attack. But the hand-drawn moments don't stop there. The heat blast transformation is so friggin' fluid and easily one of my favorites of the season. We also get without question my favorite exchange of the episode here.
Hey! You ever seen a supernova?
Several, actually.
I'm sure no other exchange will overshadow this one. The gray matter bit was, dare I say, cute, and the way big hand-to-hand, while brief, was incredibly hype. With momentum like this, I could see the score coming out to an 8, possibly a 9 if the death lands, and here is where Alien X shows up. While the initial line delivery is a little funky, I swiftly forget about it after the singular flick transition into space. Holy crap, what an entrance! What gets me about it is how sudden and casual it is, as well as the look on Hal's face. We could be getting a fight dynamic like nothing else on Death Battle right here. He then proceeds to fight with the most cookie-cutter Dragon Ball choreography ever. No. You are not about to turn this episode into another Thanos versus Darkseid. I better see some form of reality warping right now or—
Reality includes time.
You need a little help with that sir? It just seemed like you were about to click Netflix. Who would go to a restaurant and not tip their waiter, right? Also, in case you have been living under a rock, you know, haven't been out for a while, the new tip is actually 20%. Anything lower is considered an insult, so... It's embarrassing.
Fucking monkey's paw. Yeah, there's literally no way of avoiding it anymore. And I've been doing such a good and subtle job of that, too. This episode looked at Goku vs. Superman's infamy and said,
"Oh, hey! I can do that too!"
Though Ben vs. Hal might have been a bit too good at replicating it. But before we get too deep into that cesspool, let's just look at the episode itself and try to figure out exactly what went wrong here. Because everything that preceded Alien X has virtually nothing to do with the controversy, let's be honest. First of all, even disregarding outside circumstances, the fight just becomes so uninteresting once they get into space and feels incredibly divorced from the fun back and forth on the ground. They try to throw some reality erasure in there, but then it takes all of these clones to try and make dents in Hal's shield, which doesn't seem right. Would they not be able to just phase through? We then get everyone's favorite writing trope, time travel! In my opinion, time travel is the kind of trope that only works as a vehicle for a more engaging narrative. Back to the Future isn't beloved for its faultless logic, but because the characters are so likable that we're basically just along for the ride. But with this episode, it's an idea that comes out of nowhere with how briefly time manipulation is mentioned in the analyses. Without that setup, we're left with the logic of the animation itself, and even that isn't consistent. When Alien X time travels, we see only him show up. Unless his clone is just cracking a cold one and letting future him handle things. But when Hal does it, then there's a past version of him? Also, what the hell was stopping Alien X from following closely behind? There's even a famous alternate ending piece of fan art that portrays this idea. And how does killing normal Ben in the past in front of his past self not create a horrible paradox of universe-shattering proportions? And how does killing normal Ben even affect future Ben?
That really hurt. But hey, at least I'm not dead!
Even if we're assuming time is a loop, which we literally can't because of the paradox, but even if we do, how does Alien X, the omnipotent reality warper, not just say, fuck it, welcome to the Space Jam? All of this takes place in the final 30 seconds of the animation. Do you get it now? Do you see how easy this trope is to pick apart when fucked up this badly? God, we should have listened to some Call Me Johnny.
Time travel is bullshit.
And that's not even getting into the killing blow. There's a reason adult versus minor matchups aren't that common in versus. It's a much more tricky dynamic. That's not to say it can't work when handled tastefully, but seeing a child getting coldly squished into a bloody paste for a kill somehow more gory than Carnage, Sweet Tooth, and Lex Luthor's as Hal laughs about it doesn't fucking work. I knew my stance on the sprites earlier would bite me in the ass. This is especially egregious when you consider how neutered Twilight's death was in fear of little kids clicking on the video. Literally, how the hell is this any different? Ben even had a reboot show still airing at the time of this video's release. And yet, after all of that, nothing I've talked about up to now is my true least favorite part of the episode. We need to talk about one of the worst post-analyses the show has ever done. I guess to its credit, with the way the audio sounds in the beginning, it at least sets you up for a headache.
KO!
Well, that's another minor on our board of death.
It's a little less than 2 minutes long and spends half of that time talking about how Ben needed to play catch-up with all of his aliens, which is a completely moot point when we all know Alien X was the most relevant trump card. Side tangent, but can I just say that when it comes to versus discussion, how much I hate characters with arsenals that are normally really versatile and creative, but then they have that one thing that is so much stronger than the rest of their shit that it's basically the only thing worth bringing up. For Beast Boy, it's turning into... And for Ben, it's Alien Goddamn X. Feels like the villains in Food Fight have taken over. But because they spent all that time discussing shit that's basically meaningless in the grand scheme of the debate, we're left with a hollow justification for why Alien X isn't as powerful as they themselves claimed, with many of the actual stat arguments relegated to black boxes when they really should have been expanded upon way more. Their claim that the Omnitrix doesn't protect against limb removal would have been nice to clarify. And and likely would have saved them a lot of headache. Though not that much, let's not get too hopeful. And some of these arguments are just outright bad. Celestial sapiens have been known to fail in the past, so let's show footage of them losing to another celestial sapien. God, that is a bitch to type out. Time manipulation doesn't work because Hal can also do that. So then why didn't those abilities just cancel out in the fight? Green Lanterns have survived universe erasure before. Okay, but you never outright say Hal survived it. You just claim he could because other Green Lanterns did. So then where the hell was Hal at the time? Alien X is easily one of the most powerful combatants we've ever seen on Death Battle. And it's also susceptible to mind control, transmutation, and time manipulation. Do I think the dislike ratio is warranted? Not really, but I get why so many folks were a little peeved. It really felt like Ben 10 as a franchise was extremely underestimated, as if a more thorough explanation wasn't necessary. But you want to know an episode that handles this kind of conclusion much more soundly? Joker vs. Giorno, several years later, is literally just Ben vs. Hal 2 conceptually when it comes to one of the combatants having a massive stat advantage, and the other relying on one overpowered win con to carry them to victory. And the reason this conclusion works is because they actually fucking acknowledge how one-sided the matchup is on paper, spending a majority of their time pointing out the loopholes and flaws in Requiem's seemingly unstoppable power and how Joker would be able to perfectly counter it. That is to say, the crew has learned a lot from this episode's missteps, and it's nice to see how accepting they were of the episode's reputation, even making merchandise out of it. I mean, hey, views are views, what can you do? Some say this episode isn't as bad now thanks to the Q&A addressing a lot of folks' complaints. But even if they did perfectly counter every single dissenting argument, the fact remains that the episode by itself is fundamentally broken. And with analysis sections that don't have much going for them outside of a couple cute bits, Ben 10 vs. Green Lantern is hard carried by the fun, spritish first half of the fight, only for it to completely fumble its shit once Alien X tries proving that the soft spot is a conspiracy. Emerald Heroes, though, is a bop, I'll give them that. Though I have to wonder what Theirwolf was going through when writing these lyrics. Out of fear of riling up the internet any more than I likely already have, I'll play it safe and go right down the middle with my score, much like with Tracer vs. Scout. I'm just glad to finally leave this mess behind me. I cannot be bothered to make this section any longer. You truly never know what you're gonna get when it comes to this show's controversial episodes. At the end of the day, it's all just opinion, isn't it? Wow, I really went and spent more than half of this segment talking about the controversial parts, huh?
First time.
And breakthrough! No right, no wrong, no rules for me! My friend! Let it go! Let it go! You'll never see me cry!
Am I glad he's frozen in there and that we're out here?
Weiss vs. Mitsuru. Ruby, my old punching bag. Lucky for this episode, they happen to be using one of the characters I actually did like. I say did because she's one of those characters where after their arc is complete, they basically just become a complete joke that the writers don't know what to do with anymore. A Claude one might say. Wanna know my reaction to her opponent though?
Who is this red striped mohawk? Why you got hot sauce on your head, cuz? What's wrong?
I haven't played Persona 3. Get back to me after I finally pick up Reload. I'm just happy to see non-main character JRPG fighters get a shot. And if the only way she was able to get on was by trading in some of those coveted Rooster Teeth bucks, then so be it. Weiss's analysis ain't too shabby. They were pretty good about weaving her family hardships throughout, and Boomstick mentioning that she found a new family with her team was a great way to cap that off. Though some of his comments did feel a little unnecessary, especially the damn KFC bit.
KFC, KFC? No wonder they're so rich.
Where did you get that chicken?
What? You don't carry pocket chicken?
The munching soundbite isn't even matched up with his lip movements. Does he have a second mouth in there like a Ninja Turtle? Honestly though, them saying she literally puts the W in Ruby is comedy gold if you've seen her show.
At most, this would require over 900 billion joules of energy, equivalent to detonating around 230 tons of TNT.
Then why did you mention joules in the first place? Mitsuru's is way more entertaining. Atlas games have a tendency to be pretty convoluted, so it was nice to see the premise of the game so succinctly explained. Admittedly, Mitsuru's character takes a bit of a backseat. The most we learn about her personality is that she felt guilty about her grandfather's actions. But this is made up for by some fun one-liners, and without question, the best cutaway gag the show has and likely will ever do. First off, the preceding cutaway may not seem like much, but segments at this point in time were normally getting at least 2 cutaways each. And unlike most, these 2 actually work together as build-up for the punchline. This chart from Boomstick is a creative visual that he likely made in order to spite Wiz, but Boomstick let one too many details slide after mentioning real people used for testing. This is all it took for Wiz to figure out it was likely their interns, which paints a picture of how they normally treat them. But then the freaking fur coat from earlier gets a payoff as Boomstick's get-out-of-jail-free card. And they could have just ended it on Wiz's immediate return to complacency. But then the whole thing gets rounded off by an amazing ad-lib on Chad's part. It's really the anime glasses that get me with how out of nowhere it is for someone like Boomstick. It's nice to see a sketch with actual setup, escalation, and satisfying payoff. This may as well be Death Battle's equivalent to steamed hams, it's so smartly written. Josh, Sam, way to cook! Speaking of cooking, no, not that kind of cooking, it's time for redemption! As I'm sure most of you may remember, I did not have the kindest words in regards to their last RWBY episode. The characters were obnoxious, it felt incredibly Yang-biased, and it had the ugliest 3D visuals of the show that wouldn't be surpassed in eye trauma until we got to an episode that was literally unfinished. From the moment this battle starts, it evokes elegance with the fast-paced strings and piano melodies punctuating the usual butt rock we expect for this series. Winter Sonata is an awesome Werewolf track and couldn't be more fitting for a battle that almost feels like a high art performance. And this is coming off the last 3D episode where both fighters were literally ballerinas. Mitsuru's custom model is pretty damn good and wouldn't feel out of place in RWBY, which is funny to compare to Weiss's, who is a RWBY character, and yet she feels ever so slightly off in comparison. Much better than Yang, don't get me wrong, and while she does have some great facial expressions, something about the lack of stylized shading I'm sure most folks are used to from her home series, especially since they used clips from it in her friggin' analysis, almost makes her feel unfinished. Luckily, there's not much time to think about this because we go right into the action this time. No setup to speak of. Damn, even Season 1 episodes had more of a story than this. At least their banter feels on point. Kara Eberly obviously feels right at home reprising her role. I have to imagine that Ice Queen line must have felt cathartic.
Can't touch me, Ice Queen! So that's what it's like.
And you don't even have to worry about it being an inside joke thanks to the clip they played earlier in her segment.
And that is why they call you the Ice Queen.
Speaking of inside jokes, longtime fans rejoice to see Screw Attack alum Corey Petit make her grand return to the channel. Here to represent all fellow redheads with a powerful performance. Her voice print is pretty damn perfect for this character, making Mitsuru feel all business while still being a believable teenager.
Fighting me with ice, ironic, and a waste of time. Artemisia!
She kinda sounds like Weiss's sister Winter if I'm being honest, who by the way would also go on to voice a Persona character. Are you kidding me with that palace look? Ugh, focus Nate, focus Nate! The back and forth is some of the best we've gotten in this whole retrospective. They take great advantage of the unique arsenals and give Weiss plenty of summons to combat Artemisia. My favorite shot has to be when the two are having a regular sword fight in the foreground while their giant teammates duke it out in the background. Pour one out for my homie Armagigas. Dude was a loyal knight to the very end. 3D sword fights are fairly rare on this show, so to see the choreography be this well handled is refreshing compared to the metal pipe bashing of previous outings. A lot of thought went into these moves, and seeing them combined with all the glyphs for fast-paced combos and tricky escapes makes the dynamic never feel boring, which is what makes the climax pretty damn funny. So after that dramatic slow-mo shot of Weiss landing a seemingly fatal hit, we get the most iconic exchange of the episode, and full disclosure, I might have sort of hopped into this episode as it was premiering because I was running late from a class I was ditching. And And because of that, I had no idea how Mitsuru's powers worked. So when I saw her pull the gun out and point it at her own head, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, don't rage quit. You're a lot closer to winning this than you think. You're fighting Miss Can't win a 1v1 to literally save her life over here. But then I eventually realized that's just how she powers up, and I mean, hey, based. I know it's so easy to make fun of Weiss, but in all honesty, I do feel pretty bad for her getting a matchup where her opponent happens to nope a majority of her arsenal. And that's not even talking about the stat gap. I mean the real stat gap. Holy crap, Persona is busted. She's not even allowed the satisfaction of a cool death, if you can even call it that. More like a cool KO, really. I understand that it's based on Mitsuru's finisher, but that's not exactly what I'd call a fatality. It really does come off like after the backlash from Ben vs. Hal, they felt the need to overcorrect and gave us one of the tamest, i.e. lamest finishers of the show. You know it's bad when you have to question whether or not she actually died or just passed out. Though I'll admit the sword breaking is a neat Mitsuru, where are you going? There's nothing down there. Normally, I'd give an episode like this a 9, but the lack of story and hilariously awful death are blemishes that really hold this otherwise beautiful art piece back. As if someone forgot to put glass protection over the Mona Lisa. Still a highly rewatchable fight with an analysis that may or may not be hard carried by that one cutaway, as well as one of my favorite tracks. Try listening to Winter Sonata out loud in front of your grandparents next time you visit them. It's a great way to trick them into thinking you're cultured.
Buckle up, James Corden! I'm a big fan! When's the next episode of Carpool Funerals?
Johnny Cage versus Captain Falcon. Alright, enough of this high art crap. Time for some crowd-pleasing high-octane action hero schlop. Easily one of the most unexpected matchups they've done in a while. But this is one of those ideas that, when you hear, it just kinda clicks. Which it clearly must have for general audiences, as it's the first episode to hit #1 on YouTube's trending page. Whatever the fuck that means. Sometimes a vibe check is all a matchup needs, and seeing my favorite Mortal Kombat character, with a K, up against the poster boy of my favorite children's party game franchise had me beyond hyped.
What in the actual fuck?
A running theme this matchup was surely going for. Johnny's analysis is a lot of fun. I love how long his filmography is. The nutshot discussion ends with a snappy cutaway, and they get across what makes him such an awesome character. The dude may be a prick, but he's got the skills and the cojones to back up the smack. Plus, it's just cool to see a relatively normal guy fight among all these monsters and demons and even find time to start a family amidst the chaos. Once again with a K. Even when the story kinda blows, Johnny is always a consistent highlight of these campaigns. With a K.
What in the actual fuck?
Captain Falcon's analysis is also great. Boomstick's excitement for F-Zero as a sport is a consistent highlight, and seeing it culminate in him vowing to become the next Captain Falcon himself is undeniably inspiring. Even Wiz seems pretty supportive, and I love how expressive those mask eyes are. Otherwise, yeah, a great showcase of Captain Falcon's badass resume without relying too much on Smash. But considering most people know him exclusively for that series by now, there was no point in trying to run from it. Especially when he can summon a goddamn race car fueled by the Big Bang at a moment's notice. What the actual hell? How is this franchise still dead? Perhaps a sacrifice needed to be made, which leads us to this epic deathmatch. A stark contrast from our last episode that had no setup, this fight has pretty much the perfect opener. It may be a classic misunderstanding, but it's just the right amount of absurd, and the idea of Johnny possibly becoming the next Falcon Highlander style absolutely fits. I would say Falcon's name, but they never really clarify which one they're using, so might as well play it safe. I can't technically be wrong if I just call him Falcon, as long as this isn't a Millennium Falcon situation. Though in a way, it kinda is. Because this is just as much a fast-paced space race as it is a no-holds-barred audition. The first part of the battle is certainly pretty good as far as sprite battles with hand-to-hand combat go. Not as tight as Ryu vs. Scorpions, but this is without a doubt one of the best showcases of CQC in this medium. And the nut punch moment was everything I could have hoped for. Johnny's sprites look a little funky in the tuxedo getup, and some of the actual moves take a little too much wind-up time, but it still manages to be exciting due in no small part to the track by Brandon, Falcon Uncaged. watched. It's a great send-up to F-Zero's frenetic synth rock anthems and even features Rakadi B of all people. No wonder it's so electric. The casting is in a funny place for me, where it's like, they don't really sound like how they would in my mind. Kieran Flitton sounds too youthful, and Keston Howard... Okay, to be fair, there's no way they were gonna find anyone who could be a voice match for Captain fucking Falcon. Those voice lines are just way too recognizable and charmingly dated. Sakurai wouldn't get the official voice actor Ryo Harakawa back to record new sound bites until the fucking Min Min reveal trailer. But I can't deny the chemistry these two actors have together, and they're both capable of portraying the characters as equal parts silly and so cool. And just listen to some of these war cries. They're giving these performances everything they've got. Nice toasty imitation, by the way. Things get especially intense in the second half. I forgot how much this battle's choreography picks up once they start fighting on the racetrack. It's so awesome seeing them jump around the cars and cause havoc as the environment gets more and more dangerous. And then Johnny starts utilizing the boost pads for his combat with a K, and I'm like, holy shit, how did I not think of that? That is actually genius fight choreography. I need to know who to thank for this. Written by Ben? Well, that checks out. My God! Who are you people? Johnny may have lost the battle, but he absolutely won in my heart. Especially after that cold as hell approach after decimating Falcon, who totally pussed out and had to summon his Big Bang Theory race car for a victory. Now, I'll concede that the killing blow is as hype as Boomstick's reaction to it. I mean, it's the Falcon Punch. They were contractually obligated to make it hype. And the results never say he had to rely on his car to get the upper hand. But you can't deny how lame it feels from the context of the fight itself for Falcon to just hide behind his car after getting his shit rocked in their fist fight. At least Johnny was just taking advantage of the environment. Wasn't the whole point of this thing to test if he was a worthy successor? Well, no wonder you haven't had any games since the 2000s. You keep killing all your potential proteges drive-by style.
What in the air?
I do like how the conclusion follows up on a bunch of loose ends that were intentionally left vague, such as Zoda surviving that explosion. Makes the whole thing feel rounded out. And all in all, I would deem this episode to be an absolute treat. Not one of my all-time favorites due to personal bias, but still amazing regardless. Always fun to see characters left to the wayside finally getting their due respect. Oh, and Nintendo, if you're gonna make us pay $80 for your most lucrative racing franchise ever, the least you could do is bundle a new F-Zero game with it. I know you clearly like making money, so why not throw us consumers a damn bone? Who am I kidding? I'm gonna buy your shit regardless. I'm a Nintendo fan for Iwata's sake.
The winner is Captain Falcon.
Whoa in the air. What?
I cast vicious mockery, nat 20, let's go. You're a shot, motherfucker, and nobody likes you. Sure.
Aang versus Edward Elric.
Don't call me little!
We've now gotten to the other Sprite episode this season that, while not nearly as controversial, has still garnered quite the negative reputation. Even before getting into the episode's actual quality, this response isn't completely surprising. Avatar was still recovering from its previous and only episode, Gaara vs. Toph, which actually was controversial, at least enough to get a brief shout out this year. And it would be their first time talking about Full Metal Alchemist. These are two of the most beloved series of their eras, with incredibly loyal fan bases looking for an episode that would simultaneously act as a first impression as well as a hopeful redemption. And I happen to be one of those people. I love these shows so much. While I have cartoons and anime I may personally prefer, to me, Avatar and Full Metal set the gold standard for their peers. If anything, it's kinda crazy Death Battle's gone so long without using them. Except when you consider what happened when they did use elementals much earlier in their lifespan, and as we'll soon see, perhaps even this episode was too premature for their scope. But I'm willing to give it a fair shake. This could end up being a secret masterpiece like Black Widow vs. Widowmaker. So let's get right into their analysis segments. Alright, here we go.
Water. Earth.
Yeah?
Fire.
Wait.
Air.
Don't
hurt.
Go planet!
That was bad. Oh my god, that was bad. That was like all the worst elements of a Season 1 and 4 analysis combined into an unholy chimera. Still not as terrifying as the ones in Ed's show, but pretty close to it. Those cutaway gags were essentially nothing, a complete waste of time. All of the jokes can be described this way. The duck tangent, the Bradley spoiler that goes nowhere. Okay, Boomstick getting defensive about his gun was alright, but that's it. There is zero character study to speak of, and much like the worst respect threads, any semblance of personality exploring is thrown in at the very end. Anyone who's name dropped on Aang's side is only to establish that they taught him certain bending techniques. Nothing explored beyond that. To give you an idea of how bad it is, they mentioned fucking Combustion Man over Sokka. Like, what? The storytelling is insanely clumsy. They bring up the Philosopher's Stone for Ed towards the beginning, and then go for 3.5 minutes before saying he did all these feats without a Philosopher's Stone. And by that time, I had completely forgotten they'd even mentioned it. I had to check the transcript just to be sure. They say Aang brought peace to the land twice, once in the middle and again at the end. And it's not like they were referring to separate events. They were talking about his showdown with Ozai both times, so say goodbye to satisfying storytelling. But the most egregious thing about these segments that I haven't had to say in a while is that our hosts sound bored out of their minds. To be fair, Ben put out a statement that he was apparently sick while recording. But even if he was at his best health-wise, this has to be the least engaging pair of analyses since Aquaman vs. Namor. And you all know how much I laid into that one. But I'd argue these are potentially worse, at least from an expectation perspective. These are two of the most beloved animated series of all time. What do you mean, Wiz and Boomstick were going through the motions?
The same goes for earthbending, which Aang learned from his mentor Toph. But that's what Ed ultimately had to learn, what it truly means to let something go.
At the end of the day, it's really a vibes thing, and they were way off here. The alchemy episode had zero chemistry.
Not funny, didn't laugh.
But speaking of chemistry, it's time to talk about the fight. And by chemistry, I mean the one lacking between our fighters. I'm getting right into the meat of this fight's problems, because I'm honestly hard-pressed to find anything nice about it other than the music. The track art is sick, and it takes heavy inspiration from Avatar's sound font and even throws in some orchestral rock that's true to Full Metal. I could also complain about how scrunched up the art style is and how it's by far my least favorite look from Death Battle's past. Even the 3D sprite renders have more emotional range than these soulless vessels. But the visuals don't matter. Okay, that was a blatant lie. They matter a lot. In fact, apparently the gap between Avatar episodes happened because they wanted to wait until they could pull off the bending animation better, which, yikes.
What do you think that will look like?
But even if this battle was animated with today's sprite episode standards, or even Korra vs. Storms a couple years later, it wouldn't be enough to save this fight's script. One that I would posit as one of the show's all-time worst. Worse than Yang vs. Tifa, Thor vs. Wonder Woman, Android 18 vs. Captain Marvel, Optimus vs. Gundam, and yes, even Thanos vs. Darkseid. And that is simply because the character assassination on display here would make even Black Widow and Widowmaker jealous. Two actual assassins. At first, Aang seems fine. His interaction with Momo is alright. He's constantly trying to de-escalate the situation, and I like how cool he gets for this seismic locating scene.
Sorry, Momo, you're just too little. Okay, no more clappy magic.
My main issue would probably be with his voice print. Emily Fajardo does a fine job, and it's by no means a bad child voice. I just happen to be really nitpicky when it comes to feminine presenting actors playing little boy characters, especially in anime. Again, no disrespect at all. It's just that personally, I'm very rarely fooled by them.
Thank you so much for saving the city.
Thank you, 40-year-old woman!
Thank you, it's me, a fucking child.
But it's one of those things that I've come to accept with the territory. It doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the show I'm watching. So the reason it sticks out so much here is because Aang doesn't hail from this territory. Zachary Tyler Eisen gave one of the most authentic child actor performances I've ever heard during his time on Ant Bully. Oh yeah, I guess he did a great job on Avatar as well. Also Backyardigans. He was a major factor in why Aang felt like a genuine kid. And so much of the story's conflict is elevated by this aspect. I understand getting an actual child for a 3-minute animation would probably be a contractual nightmare. Not to mention the kind of community they'd be put front and center of. But it's just one of those things where I think it'd be pretty neat if they could pull it off one of these days. As is, Emily still gives a performance true to Aang's character, and he's written exactly how I'd expect him to act. I'ma just put a pin in that. It'll be important for later. 'Cause we need to talk a little about Ed, the true height of this episode's problems, who one might say came short of the audience's small Okay.
If you say one more fucking short joke, I'll cut you down to size.
Man, screw this. This episode is not worth the bodily harm. Remember how I said Aang was always trying to de-escalate things? Well, he only had to because Ed is written like a fucking menace, whose only character trait is haha, funny Napoleon complex is funny. It genuinely feels like a spite portrayal he's so flanderized. Out of Ed's roughly 11 lines of dialogue in this fight, 6 of them have something or other to do with his height. Whether it be trying to kill Aang because of the misunderstanding at the beginning.
Little! Who are you calling a pipsqueak, you stupid hairless kid?
Nobody?
Overcompensating by comparing himself to Aang's height, a literal 12-year-old.
How's this for small? Nice try, shorty!
Even using his final moments on this godforsaken crusty-ass world they live in to proclaim, at least he's taller. Mind you, all of this is set up by one single exchange in the analysis. Ragnar the Blood Edge, Luigi, Darth Vader, Bowser, Thanos, fucking Namor? All stars compared to Ed. This shit is nothing short... Nothing less than an insult to one of the most beloved anime protagonists of all time. He was insecure about his height in the anime, yes, but it's not like that was his literal only character trait. To be blunt, if this really was how he acted all the time, Full Metal Alchemist would not be nearly as iconic and critically acclaimed as it is. I can tell you that much for free. Not helping is Alejandro Saab's performance, while it is a very good impression of... Huh, that was weird. Oh look, a thumbnail for an 11-hour-long documentary I highly recommend watching that explains everything. And it just so happens to be linked in this video's description so that I don't have to answer why I've been refusing to say this actor's name out loud. Alejandro Saab may have been a brilliant choice for the character, but the shrill whining gets old pretty much the moment he appears from behind this random kiosk stand, which I guess he just happened to be napping behind. And as if to really rub hot sauce in the ears, Ed barely gets a lick of meaningful damage off. And by barely, I mean essentially nothing. At least Sonic got a few hits in against Mario. Aang is running circles around this prick, and he's not even trying to hurt Ed, making this feel like easily one of the most one-sided dynamics of the show, to the point where it made me question if this was even a matchup worth doing to begin with. Even Darth fucking Vader got to do a few cool things to the friggin' Doombot. Ed never lands a hit during their decent but uninteresting hand-to-hand scuffles. The most he pulls off are traps not even James Woods would be hindered by. He straight up gets disarmed before the climax. And his big showstopper move that's supposed to make us think he might have won is so friggin' weak. A, this does not look at all like Aang got crushed, a minor inconvenience at most. B, Aang hasn't even gone into his final form yet, of course this wasn't the end. And C, all this serves to make the actual worst character moment of this episode even more damning. I hope y'all have been keeping my point from earlier in the back of your minds. It's a surprise tool that can help us, right now actually. Surprisingly, the most controversial part of this animation arguably doesn't come from Ed. At the very least, you can say his shoddy writing is consistent. It's the out-of-nowhere, out-of-character bits that tend to leave a greater impression after all. Hell, it's why episodes like The Great Divide and Bato of the Water Tribe are so infamous. But at least you can chalk those moments up to Aang just being a kid. Making up a story so that two annoying tribes will get along? Kind of a Chad move. Hiding a letter from your friend's dad at war because you're afraid of them potentially leaving you? pretty bad, but again, he's a kid, that's understandable. Going into your final form that you had definitely mastered and learned to control by this point in time, if we're taking you at your best, to one-shot Ed? That's gonna be an eyebrow raiser for me, dog. Not only is it kinda sad to see Ed getting 0 difficulty vaporized without any resistance, Ichigo's death this is not. They somehow find a way to make it even worse with Aang's final line.
You left me no choice.
Okay, so not only is it now impossible to interpret this as an accidental kill, but now it's implying that Ed was more dangerous than the fucking war tyrant literally everyone and their twin grandmothers was telling Aang to murk. Spoiler alert! Though not really, because they mention it offhandedly in the analysis, Aang found another way to save the day while also keeping his people's ideals alive. It's one of the best handlings of a hero sparing the big bad in fiction, and it is utterly curb-stomped here. Yeah, screw the nomads! This uppity weasel broke my flying stick! You've earned your damnation, asshole. After all this focus on the death scene and how much it destroyed Aang's portrayal, it raises the question, do pacifist characters like Aang belong on a show like Death Battle in the first place? Well, much like how layered and compelling these two are in their home series, the answer isn't that simple. Batman never kills, but we don't have a problem with him on the show, and pacifist characters would be used fantastically in the future. That being said, that doesn't mean I think every fictional character needs to be on the show. It's why I don't like Sailor Moon versus Madoka as a matchup. If you know, you know. We get so caught up with if we can make something, we forget to ask whether or not we should. As for Aang versus Edward, I think it totally can work, but should it have been done? Personally, I'm inclined to say no, at least going by where the show was at the time. This is the kind of episode that requires nuance in order to be believable and not break the characters. And the team would go on to excel at these kinds of fights, some even being regarded as all-time Hall of Famers. So much like how they felt about where their animation capabilities were at the time of Gaara vs. Toph, I think perhaps the characterization aspect of this series needed a bit more time to grow. I highly doubt they tried to make Ed this insufferable or break Aang's character so egregiously. The crew just wasn't ready yet. I'm thankful Aang is coming back, and I'm sure his episode will be hype. Though I'm of the opinion that they should totally wait until Aang's movie before bringing him back, but that's just me. Also, Edward Elric versus Joseph Joestar Wen, the banter would be a gift from God. As for this episode, I choose to treat it the same way I view Bowser versus Ganon. Sometimes we've just gotta make those big mistakes to help us keep moving forward. Cabbage Guy notwithstanding, he's pretty chill.
And you're so evil that I bet you hate my literature. And I'm so evil that I'll waste your finisher.
Ghost Rider versus Lobo. Okay, so a bit of context for this one. I want to give you guys an idea of how the community was feeling around the time of Ghost Rider vs. Lobo's announcement. Ever since Raven vs. Twilight, DC had been on the most insane win streak of the show. And if Bruce had grown a pair and joined the NRA, then that streak would have been even longer. And after the last episode involving a DC character, suffice to say, peeps were getting a little tired of this. So to see another Marvel vs. DC episode announced in lieu of pitting Ghost Rider against a Season 1 veteran many people, and by many I mean me mostly, had been campaigning for to return, a bit of hell got raised. Yeah, Ghost Rider vs. Spawn was a popular matchup even back then too, and given the fact Lobo is notorious for being as frustratingly impossible to kill as friggin' Doomsday, the Ghost Riders were really hoping they'd get to chant ding dong, the Bastitch is dead. But outside of the waiting period for this episode, I didn't have much connection to these two outside of liking their designs. But that didn't stop me from enjoying their analyses. Johnny's is simply really cool. We don't get that much story stuff, but this is more than made up for by how fascinating his powers are to learn about. And they do a great job building him up as this horrifying harbinger of vengeance who acts as judge, jury, and brutal executioner.
Sorry, all out of mercy.
That end clip they used has gotta be up there among their best in terms of synergy with the script itself. Like, you cannot deny how fucking badass that is. And Wiz's monologue leading up to it was awesome enough on its own. Way to flex your Shakespearean training there, Liam. There are even some really memorable jokes like the Hail Satan squirrel, pharmaceutical Zarathos, Boomstick likening laxative pranks to eternal damnation, the Nick Cage fake out, the face Wiz makes while Boomstick mourns his motorcycle. Hell, even the ex-wife bit wasn't too shabby this time. Same goes for Lobo's, it's just straight up fun. I love how it's bookended by the meta context surrounding his creation as a parody of those roided out too cool and edgy for their own good superheroes of the 90s. We all know only one of them is valid anyway. And how he would eventually become the very thing he was meant to make fun of. Insert obligatory Harvey Dent quote. I like how this part was included as a stand-in for his weaknesses since he doesn't really have any. At least none that don't get into spoilers. This is one of those segments where the feats and backstory get so damn ridiculous that they end up carrying the whole thing on its own. But Wiz and Boomstick's commentary is still great at tying everything together for the outsiders. Kinda like Doomsday's fittingly. It's pretty hard not to be baffled by shit like moving a sun around without leverage and literally eating a city by crushing it into a marble. That's one of those feats where it's like, oh, I cannot wait to see how they adapt that in the fight. Lobo may just be a stat brick in the grand scheme of things, but at least he's committed to the bit. Combined with his surprising amount of honor, this segment just made Lobo seem like such an unconventionally fun character to follow. I honestly hope he gets to appear in more media in the near future. What the fuck? They got Jason Garbage Man Momoa to play him? Alright, now that's actually fucking perfect. You would be hard-pressed to find anything wrong with these segments.
Did somebody say Deadpool?
No, go! Okay, to be fair, at least it didn't go on for nearly as long as the last cameo, so let's just leave it at that. Besides, we still have a fight to get to. Jason Marnocha, wait a minute. Jason Marnocha, Jason Momoa, oh my god, they knew. Jason Marnocha makes a grand return, and considering his last role was Deathstroke, as well as the comparisons made earlier to other characters, getting him back as Lobo is pretty poetic when you think about it. He brings the right amount of gruffness without sounding forced, and he sounds like he's having a blast here.
I'm gonna skull frack ya!
Ghost Rider, on the other hand, ain't having jack nor shit during this fight. Stephen Kelly levels up from his Gamma Boomta cameo, and technically voices two characters here. Because of this, his performance has a few layers that are better discussed along with the escalation of the fight itself, and you'll soon see what I mean. After an out-of-nowhere Grimace cameo, hey, that damn milkshake was bound to catch up to him eventually. I like how he wasn't even in the script. The animators were just told to include a purple alien as Lobo's bounty. But after all that, I am immediately sold on the dynamic as Johnny tries to intimidate Lobo with his holier-than-thou announcement of reckoning, only to immediately get interrupted by Lobo's middle finger of an attitude. Also the literal middle finger. Lobo has zero chill throughout this entire fight, not even letting Johnny finish the damn penance stare at first.
Look into my eyes. Your soul will burn in hell.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
Every time this happens, you can hear the exasperation in Johnny's voice as he just wants to be done with this goth biker freak. The bike fight itself is pretty dang fun. I dig the close-up art on these chains clashing, and the whole thing has a really energetic vibe thanks to the Yates track Right Into Hell, which I just learned features one of my all-time favorite music YouTubers, Johnny Atma, who runs the GA Metal channel. Seriously, I cannot recommend this guy's stuff enough. My Joker vs. Sweet Tooth review literally used his remix of Dancing Mad for the whole thing. How has Death Battle not collaborated with this guy again? If it means more metal riffs on the level of this episode's track, then by all means, take my comic collection if you have to. Except for Hellboy. He's sacred, bitch. Now, admittedly, this part where they end up in the random desert city kinda loses me. The street brawling is just inherently a lot less interesting than their chopper duel. The sound design on the road dragging is pretty weak, and I just don't buy the city block as a natural part of the environment, especially with how the road just goes off into the nothing desert over in the background here. The whole thing just feels very drag and drop, you know? I'd sooner buy the fake town in Blazing Saddles, at least that one had people in it. The back and forth does pick back up once Lobo partakes in his favorite dish. Nah, I mean fetish. The clone party is fun, and I like how they're all kinda doing their own things, but for all the hyping up their analysis segments did, I can't help but feel like this battle's intentionally holding itself back. Oh? Remember how they mentioned Johnny is constantly fighting Zarathos for control to prevent chaos and destruction from erupting? Yeah, I can absolutely buy someone like Lobo pushing him over the edge enough to tag in with the Angel of Vengeance himself. And just listen to that vocal performance.
You will all die screaming!
God damn, Steven! That is what I call a fucking entrance! And all it takes is the subtlest of hand movements to wipe the floor with these godforsaken homunculi. And Jason's screams are great too. The explosion may still be low-key for them, but the space shot was at least a nice touch. And it even rendered Lobo into his corporeal form, with Zarathos nowhere to be seen. Sorry, Ghost Riders, it was a hard-fought battle, but that's just what happens when you fight a DC hero.
Lobo of Zarnia, your sins are innumerable. I am here to wreak vengeance upon your soul. No.
They didn't blow it. I mean, holy shit. Holy fucking shit! The lack of music so that the sound design and agonizing screams have more emphasis. The borderline jump scare backstab as Zarathos reconstitutes. The payoff to his previously cut off penance stare speech. The creatively used Earthbound sprites representing all the horror and agony Lobo has enacted throughout his whole life. Guys, I think we might have gotten the technically PG version of Shredder vs. Silver Samurai's death. I know that sounds neutered, but it's still a PG version of my favorite death of the whole show so far. I'm not gonna pretend like this death scene suddenly fixes my issues with the middle section of the fight, but my god, does it elevate this episode's score dramatically in my eyes. A complete opposite to Weiss vs. Mitsuru's situation. Just goes to show how much an ending can change your perception of a product once you finally see what it's all been building up to. Lobo was the perfect opponent to test Johnny's patience before letting the scary out. And Ghost Rider just so happened to be the perfect opponent to end DC's win streak. Like, when it comes to counters, you don't get more fitting than Johnny's hacks up against Lobo's soul contract. A far cry from their last DC episode's ending analysis, as well as a better version of the dreaded holy weapons weakness, which I would get into more, but I think it's worth saving for that other episode coming up soon. Until then, while there are more iconic Marvel vs. DC episodes out there, this one still does a great job hanging with the heavy hitters with an engaging analysis, rock and roll vibe, fantastic vocal performances, and bar none, one of my favorite kills of the series. Clearly a little bit of soul food was just what the doctor ordered. Dragonzord vs. Mecha Godzilla. Oh hey, a giant mech / kaiju fight. My favorite. Dragonzord segment is alright, not nearly as memorable as previous Power Rangers outings though. Hello, Kiss Cartoon. And other than the cutaway that's just kinda dumb, this is an extremely standard segment that doesn't do anything offensive.
A punch worth 90 million newtons.
God damn it! Mechas is in a similar boat, honestly. I feel like there was a lot of potential for cool storytelling here by hyping up the bond between Akane and Kiryu. But they take even longer to mention the pilot in this segment than they do in freaking Zek's segment. So it ends up feeling super half-baked. I feel like the most egregious thing about this episode's analysis portions is that they just come off as inferior versions of far more iconic segments and aren't able to stand on their own that much. But what about the introduction of Mecha Goose Howard, you might be asking? I do not care for this thing. Every time it appears on screen, the joke is either big-ass lasers or banking on the idea of you as the audience thinking geese are jerks. Dude, geese are fucking pushovers in real life. Now swans, those are the lakeside beasts you've really gotta look out for. Don't say I didn't fucking warn ya. So the analysis may be nothing special, but let's tune back into the episode and see what— oh, my bad. Must have left it on in the background or something. Better rewind to see what we missed. Oh crap, it's another in media res fight, isn't it? Okay, I get it. Production pipeline and shit. Sacrifices have to be made. But at least Weiss versus Mitsuru gives some kind of hint with the banter that there's already mutual respect between the two. Here, we have next to nothing to work with in terms of how they started fighting, why they started fighting, or even how they feel about each other beyond, "Fuck the environment, I'm going nuclear on this bitch." Nicholas Andrew Louis does pretty well as Tommy. He certainly got the upbeat energy, but doesn't get too much time to shine, almost as if he's ever so slightly held back. Which, I mean, it's a freaking Power Rangers character. This is your opportunity to go full ham, dude.
Ah, nice work, Dragonzord. Let's crush this tin can. Buddy mode, powered up and ready for action. Let's finish this.
As is, it felt like something was missing. Same goes for Hitomi Farrell as Akane. While the idea of them getting a Japanese-speaking voice actor is freaking awesome, the novelty wears off pretty fast. I wanna say she did a good job, but low-key, the fight doesn't really pick up until after she gets shot down. Fuck. When both pilots are at it, the choreography feels as disjointed as a turn-based RPG. But once the OG Destroyer Soul takes over, Kiryu becomes way more aggressive and pulls off its moves with much better pacing and impact. A lot more moments stick with me after this, like Kiryu's eyes flashing red to show the Beast Awakening, the Solange Ranger move, and the choreography in general once fighting mode comes out is top-notch. The cinematography feels more inspired. This shot especially goes so hard. Though my personal favorite has to be this wind-up punch sending Kiryu straight into the camera while its laser is blasting off. Makes me feel like I'm right there in the moment getting crushed by that massive frame. The impact is so well executed. And while the death may just be glorified vaporization, it's elevated dramatically by the sense of scale and Kiryu pulling the Dragonzord in close right after getting stabbed so it couldn't get away this time. God, that is so fucking metal. It's a shame I don't get this invested in the animation until the final minute of its runtime, though. When it comes to the rest of the fight, I gotta be honest, y'all, this just doesn't really do it for me. It's like the way the characters move is trying to capture the walking monolith feeling of Godzilla vs. Gamera, as well as the fast-paced, more anime vibe of Power Rangers vs. Voltron, leaving it in this weird middle ground that just doesn't sit right with me. I would have preferred if they had just committed one way or the other. Or better yet, go for these different movement styles separately. More anime and floaty in the first half, but bringing it to a more grounded and oppressing tone once Godzilla's soul takes control. It's just a thought, and none of this is meant to discredit the work of all these animators. That has to be a record or something, right? Maybe if the analysis segments were less forgettable and the fight motivation was more existing, then I'd probably have an easier time getting invested. Cause in my opinion, the action and visuals aren't strong enough to carry this thing until OG Zilla comes a-knockin'. Not to mention some parts straight up don't look finished, like this incredibly static transformation sequence. We even could have gotten a unique post-fight interaction between the two pilots since it was confirmed on a cast that they both survived. And this could have even been a chance to explain why they were fighting to begin with. Like some kind of training session perhaps. But unfortunately, it got cut for time. And unlike with Lance, I'm pretty bummed by this cut.
People don't realize that this shit's expensive.
Yeah. Not many battles get to end that lightheartedly. And while Draconic Robotics is certainly fitting, I've never seeked it out on my own time. Simply put, this episode is by no means incompetent, it's just very clearly not for me. And that's okay. With how wide this show's net is in terms of genres pulled from, not everything is going to hit close to home for you personally. Hell, I'm sure my opinions on Wario vs. King Dedede and Black Widow vs. Widowmaker seem pretty far-fetched to others. It's honestly just cool that this episode exists to begin with. So I'll simply leave it to others more attached to this kind of mechanized mayhem to enjoy. Talk about a terrible first episode for Raccoon Bro to start his reaction series on, by the way. He's just as clueless towards this genre as me!
Looks like the countdown's just about over, you redneck.
Hey guys, I did that thing again where I sliced my opponent in two and they don't react until
I did it first, you're not special!
Sasuke vs. Hiei. Coming off the metal tales of a review segment where I talked about two characters I don't care about, it's time to talk about an episode with two more characters I don't care about. Here's the timestamp to the next segment. Would not blame you for using it. For those willing to stick with me on this one, I'll do my best. Though, considering Boomstick's literal first line is him complaining about these two being edgelords, I have my doubts that conviction will apply to Death Battle as well. Though that card game trailer was pretty sick, not gonna lie, Wiz. Wish I could say the same for Sasuke's analysis. I do not like Sasuke's analysis. Not because I don't like Sasuke or something. He is, without a doubt, one of the most overhated characters in fiction next to his spouse.
We were meant to be together.
So, I was kinda hoping for Death Battle not to go the most obvious route with him and actually take his traumatic backstory seriously. They proceed to go the most obvious route with him and not take his traumatic backstory seriously. What little character study we get is just there to call him edgy or even outright insult the story itself. And speaking of story, this analysis does that thing where it spends a shit ton of time talking about one character to the point where you're like, wow, this is a pretty compelling beginning for Itachi's analysis. Until eventually you remember, wait a second, this isn't Itachi's analysis. They spend so much time talking about him throughout the whole thing that it makes me wonder if the showrunners really just wanted to use Itachi instead, but had to do this matchup after the backlash from that DBX we'd all like to forget happened. Also, I am officially done with the Captain Planet jokes. Hell, I was done 3 segments ago. It's become this show's friggin' Wilhelm scream. Just use Captain Planet for real and give it a damn rest already. And once again, they don't establish his rivalry with Naruto at the start, so once again, the whole both of them fighting each other to a standstill thing kinda feels weightless. Also, what is it with these Naruto protagonist segments refusing to name drop their spouse? Fucking Adam from Oni Place has more respect for Sakura and Hinata.
We used to fuck pillows and be like, this is Sakura, this is Hinata, and we'd each like get the hot girl and we just fucking pillow. It's really weird.
He is.
Paint a red stripe on him and he's just a human Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh my gosh, what did Shadow do to you people? We happen to live in a time now where everyone's gotten off their high hogs and remembered that Shadow is actually a good character. So it's nice to see so much shit age horribly on this retrospective journey because of that. Hiei's is marginally better, though it does a pretty poor job at getting me interested in the world of Yu Yu Hakusho. Don't forget that this is currently the only episode that manga has got, and they don't do much in the way of world building or even familiarizing us with most of the main cast. They at least attempt to show more good faith towards Hiei, though that doesn't mean they hold back all the time from cringy comments. Oh wow, you got tossed off a cliff as a baby and was raised by a band of thieves. Why you gotta be so emo? Yes, I'm an outsider, I get that, but I want to learn more about these two and the way their worlds operate. So when they start talking about this whole class system like it's common knowledge, they kinda lose me. They were almost onto something by mentioning how he wants to find his twin sister, but 1, they don't name drop her, and 2, this plotline has 2 sentences total dedicated to it, with one of them being at the very end. So I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that was a thing you guys established 3 minutes ago. They even show her on screen with him when they first bring this mission of his up, so I just assumed that he'd found her right away.
Oh, hi.
They don't even establish why he joined forces with Yusuke, his rival, or how they became rivals to begin with. Sound familiar? God, the story coverage fucking sucks! Now, I do think it's worth noting that ever since I originally wrote this segment, I have actually sat down to watch some of Yu Yu Hakusho finally. Good shit, by the way, the 90s vibes are immaculate. So, now that I have additional context on this world and its lore, has my opinion on this analysis segment changed for the better?
Not at all.
Also, minor nitpick, they use way more clips in Hiei's compared to Sasuke's, and that really bothers my brain. Could this be a Ben 10 versus Green Lantern situation where at least the animation does a better job portraying these two? For the most part? Not really, if I'm being honest. I know this isn't technically an in media res fight, but it might as well be with how fucking quick these two are to get the claws out. I swear, this is one step away from being another this is sacred ground motivation.
It looks exactly the same as everywhere else in this godforsaken rock.
And those line reads.
You, where are you going? Turn back.
Oh boy. The one thing I knew about Sasuke going into this is that he's one of Yuri Lowenthal's most iconic roles. And as someone who has seen Gurren Lagann and played the shit out of Sunset Overdrive and Spider-Man PS4, as well as paid attention to the friggin' official clip they played, this does not sound like Yuri at all. I know distinct voices are tough to replicate, but the voice print should at least be somewhere in the ballpark. Say what you want about the episode, but Nicholas Andrew Louis captured Yuri's mannerisms pretty damn well. No offense to Kyle Phillips. In fact, his reads eventually have a lot more passion in them as the battle escalates.
No match.
But I think he might have been a miscast. Howard Wang, though. I dig it. He hits that monotone, slightly stilted speech pattern that Chuck McGill is known for while still sounding invested in the action.
Fist of the mortal flame!
What? How?
Pathetic fool. I'm the power fire dash incarnate.
I just wish I could be more invested. To this battle's credit, it's certainly easier on the eyes than Naruto versus Ichigo. I just don't give a shit about what's happening. Where did the sword come from here? He throws it, poofs in its place, and then all of a sudden it comes racing from behind off screen. Could someone nerdier than me please explain this? The play here is that now if anyone does try to correct me on this, they'll have to admit their nerd status. The Mangekyo Sharingan sequence is really dull, lasts way too long, and is unintentionally pretty funny. Joke's on you. This shit is my kink. Hey, yo! The close-ups range from pretty good to kinda derpy, and the giant summons are really cool, though they don't last very long. The sword clashes are certainly fast-paced, but again, they only happen in the first fourth of this battle, roughly. After the illusion sequence, this fight relies a lot more on spectacle over actual choreography. The effects can be pretty good, and the art for these summons is really good, but they don't leave much of an impression on me. As for the actual fighters, how uninteresting. Much like with Aang versus Edward, I feel like these sprite models are far too simple for all the complex moves they're trying to get across. I can at least tell what they're going for with moments like Hiei's arm trembling after the one-stroke duel, but it's just too damn pixely for characters this serious. Even Natsu vs. Ace was better at getting around this art style. And Naruto vs. Ichigo, for as Maxor-coded as that fight is, I am salty. At the very least has way more going on, as well as fun anime tropes to make up for the minimal facial expressions. These character movements read a lot more like Toph tapping her foot. Now, Brandon Yates and Toxic Eternity killed it on Dangerous Gaze. Man, Season 6 had way more music collaborators than I remembered. And I'll give them credit for actually embracing the Shippuden storm this time with their controversial verdict. A lot of folks may still disagree, but let's just say there's a reason Time Ha is more of a meme than So No Match. Another episode that does very little for me, except this time it does so in a way that pisses me off way more than the last one. I'd even argue the fight is more enjoyable than Naruto vs. Ichigo at points. But at least that episode's analysis segments don't actively annoy me. But I gotta give credit for that cool-looking thumbnail. I could really use a pick-me-up episode right about now.
Eat this! Super Black Flame Nightmare Fang Kingdom Hearts Dragon Crusher Beam? Who fucking cares?
That was a 70-inch plasma screen TV. So, how can I help you?
Ganondorf versus Dracula. Alright, I'll bite. It's been about 3 years since Ganondorf's last episode. An episode that's very good at existing. And the Next Time trailer was ballsy enough to use a preview from the animation as opposed to official footage. Clearly going for a spooky Halloween tone, what with the release date. And while I'm not too familiar with Castlevania outside of the AVGN, much like James, I am quite the fan of all things spoopy.
What in the unholy name of ass is this fuckness?
Upon announcement, I was ready for Death Battle to redeem themselves from last time. Again. Granted, the bar was even lowered across this time, but still, I didn't just want a good Zelda episode, I needed a great one. And so, as the self-proclaimed biggest Zelda fan of the Versus community, oh my god, Ganondorf's analysis is so freaking good, you guys! And they didn't even need a pace-breaking Star Wars joke to get there. It actually treats him with the gravitas he deserves, not just by focusing on his amazing power output, but also his cunning and how he had to work his way up to get there, becoming the bodacious big bad we all fear. Love that kick-ass music drop we get once he obtains said power.
As well as a curiously familiar boy in green.
Hey, what do you know? Weird coincidence.
Starting out with Demise was such a brilliant move, and unlike Itachi, he didn't outstay his welcome. Probably also helps that Demise and Ganondorf are basically the same person, but that's prequel shiz for ya. It was a bold choice to focus mainly on Ocarina of Time for the story, but I think it paid off. This allowed them to focus on his most iconic origins and his rise to power. They even referenced the alternate timeline where he beats Link. From there, they used the other games to show what he's been capable of since busting out of his Eternal Seal, which keeps Ganondorf's story from feeling disjointed. And the rest of his games don't feel skimmed over because Zelda campaigns are admittedly notorious for having a recurring villain that's got a cool-ass design and vibe, only for Ganondorf to come in and snag the final boss title from them at the last second. Like a true villain. Regardless, I just love seeing so much of this franchise get a little bit of lovin'. I like how they don't name-drop Link until after Ganondorf gets the Triforce. It feels like we're seeing things from his perspective, since to him, Link is just some random kid who isn't even worth batting an eye at, until it becomes personal with the Triforce splitting up. And calling him a familiar boy in green is a nice nod to the reincarnation aspect of the franchise. This whole segment really is just a better, more fleshed out version of his last one. It even has a great cutaway.
A prisoner to the void between space and time, never to return ever again.
Sorry. I couldn't keep a straight face.
Yeah, no, he got out like the next day.
Wiz and Boomstick holding back their laughter before exploding while trying to say Ganondorf was sealed away for good is not only funny because of how damn real that is, it even serves as a fun nod to Wind Waker. Like, it'd be crazy to expect them to delve into every single Zelda game, so this was a neat compromise. There's even a subtle continuity win for those obsessed enough to pay attention. Don't I feel special for remembering something I had just watched a week ago? Dracula's is just as strong, and while I obviously can't geek out over the little details as much as with our previous segment, Hello Kim Cartoon, can I say how refreshing it feels to have two analyses back to back that are actually funny? I mentioned the got out the next day bit, but Boomstick's step-by-step turn into a vampire plan is pretty solid too, especially thanks to the out-of-nowhere Luigi name drop. Boomstick clearly needs to give TED Talks more often. The Kirby bit was refreshingly snappy and to the point. I like how Boomstick realizes that Dracula went through the same backstory twice, and even the Tinder joke has a creative visual. All in all, Mr. Swan has done it again, and I'm a lot more sold on this matchup than Ganondorf's previous outing. The idea of two boundless evils that can never stay dead thanks to reincarnation and unlimited health bars goes hard. Kinda like me every time I rewatch this animation. It's another 3D fight. But something's a little different this time. Up to now, the CG animations we've been getting could be best described as in-house productions. But just because there's more people on board, that didn't mean the crew could pop out these beautiful fights like gumballs. The demand called for more supply, so Death Battle looked beyond for some help. Even if that meant relying on an old as fuck engine to do it. Make way for the SFMians! David Herbert, aka Daitomodachi, David Roldan, aka Duvad Hodan, David Fisher, aka SXR123, and Devil Artemis, aka Devil Artemis! A little disappointing that this entire team couldn't be from Daveland, but we've still at least got a Will of D thing going. Wait, Christina's credited here too? Hey, Death Battle Wiki, mind fixing that? Alright, you know what, forget about my D thing. This was still an Avengers assembly of veteran 3D animators with dedicated audiences of their own, placing Fisher in a position to sort of round the whole crew out with his previous experience on the show under his belt. Honestly, kinda beautiful to see him training the new guard in a similar fashion as Torian from before. And much like our previous big software switch-up, the change is both noticeable and very much appreciated. Being an SFM, this battle naturally has a very unique look and movement style. And while every now and then it can be a little stiff, those moments are sparse and never take away from the art direction and atmosphere. I know some peeps take issue with these first punches thrown by Ganondorf for looking static, but the reason it doesn't bother me is because of how dynamic the lighting and camera angles are. It almost feels like watching a really high-effort webcomic. It just feels too intentional to deem it a negative, if that makes sense. Sure, the following scenes get more fluid, but that's in service of the battle's escalation since these two are very clearly getting stronger and stronger throughout. Okay, I'll admit, this part is a little silly, but the whole fight still has a consistent, not to mention beautiful, direction. Take the very setup, for example. This has to be one of my favorite establishing shots yet. The castle is shrouded in an air of mystery and made particularly chilling thanks to the piano melodies and vocals of the Dark Lords. An excellent Werewolf song that only ramps up in intensity from here once the guitar riffs come in. Yet they never lose that organ or choir outright, which makes me so happy for a Ganondorf fight. He's come to steal Dracula's throne. Okay, I swear it's totally different from Thanos vs. Darkseid. Trust. And we even get an actual vocal performance out of him.
Stand down, motherfucker! Or stand up. Or sit down on that chair and stand. Sit down, stand up, and sit. Or sit down and stand. Or sit down on that chair and stand up right now, goddammit. Stand there and sit! Fuck! God damn it, I'm fucking mad! Pull it out of your ass and sit on it! Sit down on that fucking chair and stand up, motherfucker! Keep fuck shit! Stand and fucking sit!
Okay, but for real this time, he's played by William T. Sopp. I'll admit, this threw me off guard the first time, especially since it'd be years until Ganondorf would have the privilege of being voiced by the peak male form, Matt Mercer. Considering how much they were leaning into his Ocarina iteration, it did not take long for this performance to click with me. He sounds pretty naturally demonic with hints of an inferiority complex.
I'm no mere man.
Shut the fuck up! Also, props to William for being one of the few voice actors on the show to sound like they're in genuine pain during this flame attack. Like, holy crap, dude, are you okay? And starring opposite of him is Stephen Kelly once again with a slimy and deliciously hammy performance. Ham, which is clearly there to honor the cheesy voice acting Castlevania is iconic for without using it as an excuse to skimp on quality. I can tell Stephen was having a blast with this performance, which can be said for Dracula in general here. Having Dracula sitting pretty high atop his throne looking down on Ganondorf was a very intentional choice for establishing the dynamic. Drac is a conniving little shit, and even if that wasn't as clear as his scenery-chewing grins, the very first dialogue exchange establishes how little Drac values human life. After all, he threw his humanity away a long time ago.
But what is a man? A miserable pile of secrets.
This quote seems on the nose at first, which it most certainly is, but it's also used in a clever way of establishing Ganondorf's position in this fight. In a way, he's essentially trying to prove himself to Dracula that he is in fact hot shit, as he too left behind his mortal bonds in the pursuit of ultimate power. And at first he even surprises Dracula with his blinding speed. Another benefit of that paneling style I brought up earlier. These individual poses convey a lot of emotion in a very short time frame, and with how fast it is, it's like being right there in Drac's shoes. But surprise attacks only work once. As from here on out, Drac is having the time of his life toying with this wannabe demon lord. Whether it be bombarding him with objectively the most annoying enemy in video game history or even just straight up bitch slapping him. Like, do you have any idea how hard that goes from a Zelda fan's point of view? That's not to say Ganondorf doesn't have some incredible moments himself. One thing, among many things, that this battle has over the Bowser fight is the representation of Ganondorf's moveset. He's not just a Captain Falcon clone this time. Could you imagine how much more that would have stuck out in this season? He gets into a magical back and forth that goes beyond a rousing game of tennis, gets to use his swords, and any melee attacks he does throw out have an extra bit of sorcerer's stank added to them that gives his choreography so much more personality than before. Seriously, these visual effects are incredible. This is clearly going to be a strong suit of the SFMians going forward. Yet despite all of this, the furthest Ganondorf gets in this section in terms of actual meaningful damage is accomplishing step 1 of the 10-step how to kill an overpowered vampire plan. While it is admittedly cathartic from a Mario fan's perspective seeing Ganondorf getting ragdolled like this, the real reason it works is because it's in service of his character. A big focus of the analysis was his rise to power. He's kind of a newbie at this whole immortality thing compared to Drac, and we constantly get shots of him using the Triforce to keep pushing himself further and further, clearly putting in way more effort than his opponent who doesn't even flinch at decapitation. Post-mortem spasms notwithstanding. After all, it's Ganondorf who invaded Dracula's castle. As if his insecurities led him there after hearing tale of an ancient of chaos possibly older than the goddesses themselves. Even after tearing through Dracula's hordes as likely implied by Ganondorf's first line. Suffice to say, he's a bit out of his element at the final boss. Dracula is so confident in his win that he even busted out his final form first. A very ballsy move in the world of Death Battle. Because as we all know, the first person to transform up to this point is always lost.
Allow us to introduce ourselves.
Tired of getting cooked, Ganondorf busts out his Porky form, ironically, and actually does visible damage for the first time in this fight, even getting Drac backed up in a corner, which ultimately turned out to be his true downfall. This single action offended Dracula so much that he decided he was done playing with his food and was going to end it all right there, right now. After all,
I am no simple vampire. I am a god.
Holy shit! Are we sure Drac doesn't have an angel of vengeance tucked deep inside of him too? This line read has it all. It is the ultimate encapsulation of shut up and know your place, swine. And I mean, hey, to Ganondorf's credit, he did technically accomplish what he set out to do and got Dracula to take him seriously. He even acknowledges that Ganondorf is in fact not a man. He's a pig.
Let me hear you squeal.
And once our Demon King realizes that he's all tapped out, squeal he does. God, I love this death. It's not only brutal in a way that actually fits this time, it does a great job tying into the dialogue at the start as well as this episode's theme of hubris being your worst enemy. Enough wasn't enough for Ganondorf. We see this every time he pushes the Triforce of Power to its limit until it's too late, which is why that shot of his wrist shorting out right before the killing blow is so significant. His thirst for power cost him everything and couldn't stack up to the embodiment of chaos himself, whose own power was leagues beyond anything Ganondorf has ever dealt with. And having holy weapons didn't hurt, I guess. But thank God they learned their lesson from last time and made it clear that the pools of energy they pull from was the ultimate decisive factor. The holy angle just happened to be another trump card. Nice to see this wasn't a fluke from Ghost Rider's episode, where they actually proved he was immune to all conventional means of physical damage as opposed to just assuming holy weapons are his only weakness. And what do you know? Drac's weak to holy weapons too, but that didn't automatically make him go into the fetal position. Like Boomstick said, this was a verdict all about power. I also love how he dares Wiz to lick the batteries after his analogy. Analysis segments that are great at tying the combatants together, gothic imagery and sound design that just oozes aura, layered vocal performances, stunning visual effects that enhance the already exciting fight, shots that are honestly pretty fucking scary, one of my all-time favorite death scenes? You guys! Remember what I said at the beginning of this review segment? I didn't just want a good Zelda episode, I needed a great one. Well, I didn't get a great Zelda episode after all. I got a perfect one. And hey, I can still enjoy it in spite of my preferred series losing. Who'd have thunk it? I certainly didn't think a character could go from getting one of my most heated rants to one of my most glowing raves. Then again, Halloween specials do tend to be my favorite part of most shows, so I'm pretty happy to see the same principle apply here. These fighters may be demonic, but their episode together is truly blessed. I sure hope Sakurai takes satisfaction in knowing that his little side project would end up leading to one of the most beloved death battle episodes ever. That's why he made that cute ROM hack, right?
Leave me alone!
Akira! Mob versus Tatsumaki. Oh hey, more anime characters I'm actually knowledgeable on. I've always thought One Punch Man was very cool for what it is, particularly the first season, like holy shit, Madhouse! And Mob Psycho 100 is easily one of my favorite anime ever. Such a unique and expressive animation style starring one of the most precious cinnamon buns that could send you flying into 1,000,000 next weeks. Also, Dimple is the GOAT, just wanted to put that out there. Mob's analysis is fairly solid. They have a very clear understanding of his character, and while I love how much they focus on the sillier aspects of his journey, like his desire to take part in the Body Improvement Club, it did feel kinda weird how little they talk about Rayyan despite mentioning him at the beginning as a sex symbol. Which, let's be real, that's not inaccurate. But beyond that, they don't mention their relationship at all, which is a pretty glaring thing to skip over for a Mob Psycho analysis. It also has parts like the broccoli feat where in the moment it feels kinda random to bring up, and it's pretty obvious they're waiting until the ending results to actually go into the calculation for it. Now, this isn't uncommon for Death Battle to do, but this time felt a bit too non-sequitur-y in the moment. As a whole, this segment is at least good at establishing why Mob is so outwardly bland and how that suppression affects his powers. It's also the first time cloud moving feats get brought up. One of my personal favorite feat categories for how unexpectedly powerful it is than you'd think. I didn't even mind the Katamari reference. Boomstick's little jingle is just too adorable to get mad at. Tatsumaki's is also good for similar reasons. They talk about how arrogant and closed off she is due to her terrible upbringing, and how she'd eventually loosen up after a humbling defeat. but it's not exactly newcomer friendly, and pretty much assumes you're familiar with the world of One Punch Man to start with. Including Saitama himself, who isn't technically name-dropped until said fight is brought up. Not as distracting as Sasuke vs Hiei, since I doubt many people would consider Tatsu a rival character per se, but a little more build-up would have been nice. Also, I'm not sure if Bak realized when writing the script how funny One Thought Woman sounds out loud. Maybe it wasn't as common a phrase back then. I don't remember. Hey, kinda like the cutaway gags. That's a lie. I literally just watched them. Still don't like them here, though. So let's talk about an animation that's a bit more memorable. This fight is probably up there as one of the most praised of its time, arguably rivaling Jack vs. Afro in popularity, and it's not hard to see why. While it's not exactly hand-drawn, it is another addition to this show's sprite-ish gallery. 3 episodes I effectively refer to as the good, the bad, and the ugly. Bear with me on this one. Despite its relatively short length that doesn't have quite as much action as you'd probably think, this animation is chock full of some extremely memorable moments and a fast-paced dynamic that hardly lets up. For their first time tackling 2 espers, they handle the back and forth brilliantly through the use of color schemes to visually translate who has the advantage state. A creative liberty, yes, but a justified one that makes this crazy battle simple to follow. Bo Bridgeland has a nice impression as Mob. His transition from disappointed cinnamon bun to the don't come to school tomorrow persona is seamless.
You shouldn't use your powers on others. Time to teach you a lesson. By the way, just so you know, this is your fault.
I love how they handle the percent meter. He actually starts off around 40%, which is realistic given how it's something that gradually ramps up during the show from little things getting to him. And while Tatsu may have a little stature, her personality is anything but, which is what makes the rage beatdown one of the most satisfying comebacks of the show. From Mob's brutally honest commentary to Tatsu's frankly priceless reactions.
What? What?
Seriously, Jennifer Alex killed it here. Really leaning into that arrogant bitch energy at the beginning until eventually becoming outright horrified once Mob's true power awakens. I love how a majority of the top comments for this episode are about how quick Tatsu is to throw a miner into the wall for doing basically nothing. But from what I remember, it's really not that big of a stretch. What is, though, is an element of this fight I've been putting off, as it's been putting me off from calling this fight perfect more and more over the years. As you can see, with this being the last sprite-ish fight of the season, all hands were on deck to make this as visually striking as possible, which makes sense for characters like these where their animation is so beloved. But after all this footage I've been showing off, you've probably noticed something a little quirky about this battle's art style. Or should I say, art styles.
What the fuck did you do to me?
Yeah, the constant switching in looks makes this fight kinda wonky as an overall product, which could possibly explain moments like the 180-degree rule getting absolutely fucked during the first attack sequence. With Carnage vs. Lucy, the art style switches felt much more deliberate, only using the hand-drawn portions to get across movements and emotions that'd be a lot harder to convey with the sprites they had to work with. And to Ben vs. Hal's credit, whenever the art style changed, it was usually to give certain actions more impact or simply to make the transformation sequences look more fluid. Here, there's no rhyme or reason to the switch-ups. Sometimes they'll even have different art styles while on screen at the same time. Not even the sprite models used are consistent. We go from these incredibly simple scrunched-up models to these hyper-detailed jerky portraits on a whim. And don't even get me started on the amount of hand-drawn styles we get. Some look fucking incredible, as if they're right out of the source material. Others, kinda not so much. I've seen arguments that this is in reference to how One Punch Man does a similar thing with its art style, but the only time that defense works is for this moment with Tatsu after she got slammed into a building. It's very obviously trying to evoke the feeling of one signature style. Wiz and Boomstick even talk about these scuffed drawings during her analysis. And much like in the actual anime, it's there to accentuate a comedic moment. But here's the thing. That's the only joke in this fight. The rest of it is played fairly straight. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but it does make the constant art shifts a lot more distracting as a result. Don't get me wrong, I still love most of these art styles. I still have no idea how they managed to pull off the mystery percent form, and the 3D cities used a great effect for Tatsu's Katamari playthrough. I can still enjoy this fight for the most part in spite of the inconsistent reanimated look, though I can't quite say the same for the ending. To their credit, this kill is very cleverly foreshadowed moments prior, and the lead up to it is wonderfully brutal, almost making me root for Tatsu despite being a mob supporter. Like, that is some Uzumaki shit right there. This thought woman is put through the ringer, no doubt, which is what makes the killing blow feel kinda weak. Like, sure, the meteor is set up properly, but it's so fast that it loses impact. And it took a few viewings when this episode first came out for me to realize Mob's shield is being broken here. I certainly find a more tranquil death for this character preferable to a different killing method that also involves a green aura. But what really makes this ending fall flat is Tatsu's final line. This could have been a chance for them to acknowledge her growth as a character by having her give Mob credit as a powerful opponent. But she goes right back to being a hater, and it just comes off as a missed opportunity in my eyes. Like, imagine if we got something more like this.
I guess you were pretty impressive after all. But nobody beats me.
Not trying to say I'm a better writer by any means, just an idea that I think would be worth exploring if they were ever to bring her back on the show. Also, you know how Death Battle has a reputation for saying an episode was an extremely close match followed by a conclusion that presents the battle as an absolute shit stomp? Well, Season 6 has quite a few battles that are some variation on this cliche. And in my opinion, Mob vs. Tatsumaki is easily the worst. Borderline patronizing with how dishonest it is? Mob could probably win this battle 40 times out of 100. Doesn't give him a single advantage, and even has a black box where they point blank say she could have overpowered his defenses at any time. Like, fuck off, man. Just say Minnie Mo Howard was cooked. Okay, I know that was an obvious reference, but hey, the man is a pretty powerful Esper in his own right.
Mother peaks!
I still consider this a great episode overall. Solid analyses, the choreography is fast and engaging, Yates' track 100% has a kick-ass use of brass and electric guitar, the sense of speed makes you feel like you're flying through the air, the personality clash is accurate for the most part, and it's a great reminder of how many talented people work on this show. But sometimes it can be a little obvious when too many cooks are working on the same dish, which they have gotten a lot better at hiding over the years. Though, speaking of hiding, I suppose it's time to face the inevitable. Prepare yourselves, folks. Things could get ugly from here on out.
I am like this because ADHD, autism, neurodivergent.
I have ADHD as well.
Right, but because you said that's what the mask is, I think you're a
Oh no! I just got a government notice on my phone. It looks like my state legislature just passed a new law effective 2 seconds ago banning the number 118 from the internet. Well gosh, if that number doesn't exist anymore, I guess Deadpool vs. Mask doesn't exist either. And I really wanted to review it too, such a shame.
Bro. Yeah, bro? Close your eyes, bro. Bro. Tell me what you see, bro. Nothing. Bro. That's my life without you, bro.
All Might vs. Might Guy. Ending things off a little differently, aren't we? Most finales up to now have tried to go big, or at the very least use some kind of iconic rivalry. Might is a matchup that had gained traction relatively recently when this episode was released. And you certainly won't be seeing these two chucking planets at each other. Though I see the vision. Regardless of quality, Thanos vs. Darkseid was a battle of the ultimate tyrannical evils that have wreaked havoc across the cosmos. So to have the next season end with a pair of combatants whose main missions are to bring hope to the masses while wearing a smile on their face is kinda genius. Now all they had to do was make a good episode. This season's anime episodes have been all over the place. Wait, Let me rephrase that. This season's episodes involving at least one anime character have been all over the place. Avatar is an anime, and neither is Ruby. Mitsuru's from a game, and she's still more of an anime character. Cry about it. So this was the season's last chance to give me something beyond. And All Might's analysis is so good! He's the perfect character to debut my hero on the series, given the anime pretty much covered everything he'd do as an actual fighter. And I like the idea of giving characters whose main purpose is to pass on the torch one last chance in the limelight. I like the running gag of Boomstick yelling how proud he is to be an American, despite Toshinori being Japanese. The Incredibles references at the very least fit the segment's vibe, and I just love celebrating characters who legitimately want to help people and have no ulterior motives. It honestly feels like symbols of hope are getting rarer and rarer these days in fiction. Boy Scout characters aren't automatically boring. Nice to see Clark get a little bit of love by proxy. And in case you're wondering what went missing during this sudden jump cut, so cool! Same goes for Mike Guy. I like how much weight was put upon the consequences of using the 8 gates. And hey, they actually bother name-dropping important people this time, and even referenced an episode other than the one with that unavoidable moon feat. I do feel like more emphasis could have been placed on his relationship with Rock Lee, but they at least go for parallelism by ending on him finding a worthy successor to carry on his legacy and teachings. Without a doubt, these are two of my favorite segments of the season, simply because Wiz and Boomstick sound like they respect the hell out of these two as fighters, and especially heroes. So they deserve proper tributes for the sacrifices they've made in the mission for hope, which got me pretty hopeful for a dope-ass fight, but a little concerned too. Season 6 is great, don't get me wrong, but it's not exactly the best when it comes to fight setups, assuming they're even attempted. Hold it!
Thanks, Dave. I got it from you. I'm so sorry. I messed up the lines a little bit.
No problem.
Yeah,
You did
no
great.
problem. See you Sunday?
See you Sunday. Okay, Kame.
How could they possibly make these two antagonistic enough to want to kill each other? That's the neat part. They didn't. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you everything I wish Mario vs. Sonic, Ben 10 vs. Green Lantern, Optimus vs. Gundam, Raven vs. Twilight, Android 18 vs. Captain Marvel, and a bunch more I don't feel like listing off could have been by letting these likable heroes get to act like likable heroes. Yeah, Genevieve and Ben absolutely did their homework here. These two aren't just fighting over who's the better hero or for an extra spot on the fucking park bench. They're simply kindred spirits who vibe. They don't even really spar at first. Mike Guy challenges him to an arm wrestling contest because he finally found someone who can match him in being extra even for an anime character, which can probably be attributed to their reason for fighting at all. They simply got carried away in the love of the game. And that's the ultimate reason for why this is one of my favorite episodes of all time, as well as some folks' favorite episode, period. A wholesome as hell bromance that just so happens to tie together one of the best choreography showcases on the internet. I mean, look at these fluid as hell movements. This is even more Montiome coded than episodes featuring characters he animated. With Guy's breakdancing shenanigans and Toshinori's freight train force, the battle felt like a true test of agility and skill versus indomitable strength and durability. This is consistent for the most part, with that gap in power slowly getting closed as Guy goes through his gates until straight up one-shotting his opponent at the end. And this dynamic is brought to life with a style many liken to Spider-Verse due to its intentionally choppy frame rate. This allows them to get away with much more expressive and outlandish poses that stay true to their anime roots, especially with Guy. Once I saw this scene of him describing everything he loves about All Might, I was immediately hooked on this artistic choice. It gives us moments like the groundbreaking before the table, Guy's perfect 10 landing after getting hit, which might be the most badass visual gag ever, and I guess the one references weren't tapering off anytime soon, along with another running gag of references.
Hey, wait a minute, what the hell?
I suppose I'd better address it now that it's become unavoidable, as well as the fact that this would be the last one. But starting with Thanos vs. Darkseid, a tradition was started to include a subtle cameo of the previous 3D Fighters winner.
The Optimum Prime!
It makes sense that it started here, since this team didn't work on Ryu vs. Jin. Now, you might be thinking how the hell could they have referenced that fight to begin with, but I'm willing to bet some of you out there didn't even know these Easter eggs existed until now. Including me, I needed the wiki to come even close to spotting some of these. But the same cannot be said for the finale to this inside joke. Have you ever wondered what the hell Dracula was doing here out of nowhere in broad daylight? Well, wonder no more. Considering how over the top this fight was and how this would be the last time they did this Easter egg anyway, might as well go out with the most in-your-face bang there is. Kinda like how banging this soundtrack is. Ooh, I love Mighty. Lyrics that are just as uplifting as the fighters, and an incredible piano rock melody. Nothing could be more fitting and downright iconic. True to the name, All Might is voiced by voice acting icon Kaiji Tang. Possibly his best performance on the show. Hard to say with how he set the bar as Jack. And while he obviously doesn't sound like Chris Sabat, I mean, it's such a distinct voice, I don't know how they could have possibly replicated it. He's still a believable symbol of peace, constantly encouraging his sparring partner to show him everything he's got.
You're inspiring, but no one can defeat the symbol of peace. Ah, screw it. You wanted my best? Here it is! United States of
It's simply inspiring. And I'm glad to see that whoever they got as Guy was able to keep up and give a memorable as hell performance that's so entertaining and even chilling.
I can't lose. I have the power of youth on my side. You're splendid, but I'll show you exactly how hard I've worked. Sixth Gate of Joy, open!
So hats off to Mr.
No, I can't laugh yet.
Yeah, I'm not giving you people the ammunition. And just to be clear, I'm not being cheeky this time because they got his official voice actor. Ben even deconfirmed this himself. I've even seen speculation that this was Xander Mobus. You may have heard of him. He's also known as Mr. Lion-O, /Robocop, /Wolverine, /Agumon, / This all stems from a reaction video where Alejandro Saab claims as such.
So cool!
And that's Xander Mobus, aka Joker, aka Persona 5, aka...
He better win.
Well, time to spill the proverbial tea all over this chat. It wasn't Xander Mobus.
Fuck!
How do I know this? Could have something to do with the fact that I work for the guy who met Xander at a convention and asked him if he voiced Might Guy, to which he replied, if I wasn't credited in the video, then it wasn't me. Simple as that. Not to mention it would be a little weird for him to want a pseudonym here specifically when he clearly didn't have a problem with it for all of his other roles on Death Battle. So now that we know who it wasn't, who could this mysterious figure be? Shit if I know. Some mysteries were just meant to be mysteries. It doesn't take away from the stellar performance, nor does it hinder the, for lack of a better word, dynamic camera angles that follow the action, seamlessly elevating the already tight hand-to-hand to whole new levels of artistry. And it's all brought together by that emotional gut punch of an ending. I love how much gravity is given to this transformation chain. It felt like Guy did it out of genuine respect for his sparring partner. And once he officially had nothing left to lose, that was the moment that led him to laying all the cards out on the playing field to show everyone, and possibly even himself, what it means to go beyond. Plus freaking ultra. And even in his final breath, he still keeps up his good spirits in honor of the epic fight they both had. Now, I'll admit, the killing blow isn't as flashy as it could have been, but I'd like to give a shout out to Digital Ty for his take on this moment. While I still prefer Ganondorf vs. Dracula as an overall episode with its much stronger finisher, I can't deny that, much like with Mob, a brutal kill just wouldn't fit these characters, and something more bittersweet was needed to keep the spirits alive. They may be gone, but the legacies they left behind are immortal. Oh, everything about this episode is so good! The fall aesthetic is beautiful, happens to be my favorite season in fact. And I love these scenery shots that show how massive their attacks get as well as how fast they're moving. The action is legendary, the interactions are peak, the visual effects are godly, and most important of all, it just makes you happy, man! If I'm having a dark moment that's left me down in the dumps, this is the ultimate feel-good episode to raise your spirits high. It has more than earned its status as a finale episode, due in no small part to its effect it had on the series as a whole. If you're a member of the Versus community, think of the number of times you've discussed a potential episode idea, and someone chimed in to say something like, "Ooh, that one would really benefit from the Might treatment." I don't know why I gave them that voice. That was kind of rude of me, honestly. They weren't hurting nobody. This episode is so goddamn influential that it essentially coined a whole new genre and made us rethink the kinds of stories versus videos are capable of telling. If that's not finale worthy, I don't know what is. Share this one with your friends and you're guaranteed to put a smile on their faces. Fucking splendid. Alrighty, that's season 6 for ya. Every episode worth talking about has been reviewed, and nothing of value was lost. Ow! Why do I feel a sharp, drowsy feeling in my... Oh, there go my non-existent legs.
Next time on Death Battle, the real heroes come out to play.